everyone, I'm Christine Batisky, Chairperson of the Personnel Committee. Welcome to our Personnel Committee for Tuesday, June 10th. We don't have any public comment today, so we're going to move right into our agenda. Our Cabinet Liaison is Ms. Tara Mossman, and the first item on the agenda is job descriptions. So there's about 15 job descriptions on tonight's agenda. If you could walk us through those.
Yes. So we are continuing to work through all of the job descriptions in the district. Most of the job descriptions on here have minimal changes. Ms. Diane Miller made updates to our technology department job descriptions to align with the new systems that we have in place in the district, as well as Ms. Bev Hendricks has been here with the district for about a year now, so she has been working to update the nutritional services job descriptions. So does anyone have any questions regarding the numerous job descriptions that are on the agenda for tonight?
So you moved information technology into, okay, that's why it came up.
Yes.
It changed it. That was the only thing I saw. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't have any other issues.
Yeah, I didn't have any specific questions. Anybody else?
Just like one sec, could we get an updated org chart then?
Yes.
Just so I can make sure. But I have no comments on it.
It's on our website too.
It is on
Oh,
the
okay,
website.
it's
We know what it
That
may
will
not
be
be.
updated.
Oh, okay.
Yes, once the board votes,
Oh, then I'll
makes a
see.
formal
Yeah.
vote on
Good. Don't worry
June
about that.
16th, we'll certainly update the org chart.
That's fine, I've got it there, thank
Well,
you.
sometimes we haven't been good at updating, so that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past.
We'll add Dr. Bloom and any shifts or
Right.
deviations, we'll certainly update those.
Okay. All right, so next on the agenda is benefit renewal, stop loss coverage.
So tonight we have Jim Hine with us from Conrad Siegel, and he is going to walk through the stop loss renewal approval.
Okay. Thanks, Tara. As Tara said, my name's Jim Pine. I know I was here, I think, last June and then earlier this year to talk to you guys a little bit about healthcare. Every June, you're coming up on your July 1 renewal for stop loss, so we like to kind of give an overview of what's in place right now and where your renewal was. If we look at the exhibit, that mainly has kind of it's kind of page 2 of our packet, has all the different stop loss offers that were laid out here for 25-26 on the district's behalf. Just to give you a very quick high-level overview, okay? The actual stop loss policy that's in place right now is on kind of the left side of the screen here. And basically what the stop loss policy is doing is it's protecting the district against very high claim costs. So if you have one individual who has $1 million in claims, it could be an employee, a dependent, a child, the stop loss policy basically protects the district from paying that extra amount above the threshold. Right now, your threshold is $225,000, and your stop loss carrier is RMTS, who pairs with Nationwide Insurance. And one of the things you'll note on the left side of the page here, you can see your current policy in place has approximately $842,000 in premium, and it has 2 individuals who are lasered. And what lasering essentially is when the stop loss carrier says we're identifying risks who are a little bit higher, who we expect to have higher claims above that $225,000 threshold, they put more specific thresholds in for those 2 individuals at $325,000. For this year, those 2 individuals, we haven't seen them approach that level. So as far as what we're aware for 24-25 right now, you're really probably only looking at the $842,000 in premium.
So the 1,042,000 is if you add the extra 100.
Exactly.
Okay.
The extra $100,000 for those 2 individuals, that would be kind of your maximum liability for the full stop loss policy. And part of the reason we wanted to show that is because when you come out to the right, we want to compare a little bit apples to apples here and show you, as we look at all the different offers that we went out and got, there's a number of different carriers that we went to. We obviously were working with your current vendor to go out and essentially negotiate the most aggressive renewal we could find on your behalf. Last year we went through this process, there really weren't competitive offers. This year, there's still not that many competitive offers. As you go across the page, especially out to the right, you can see carriers like HM, Voya, Sun Life, Tokyo Marine, HCC, all had premium numbers that just for that stop loss coverage were well over $1 million, for instance. RMTS, your actual initial renewal, their stop loss premium was $918,000 roughly. However, at that point, they did put in 2 lasers that were each at a $500,000 limit. So those 2 lasers end up essentially exposing the district to another $275,000 apiece above your stop loss threshold. So as part of our process, we went out, found really what we could find was the most competitive kind of offer for the district. That came from Avalon, who did put up a fairly good proposal, and we were able to use that to essentially negotiate a little bit more with our MTS. And you can see what our MTS was essentially able to do with their final offer was take your renewal increase down from a 9% to a 7.5%. So you're looking at $900,000 roughly, or $905,000 in annual premium. And then they did agree to eliminate one of those $500,000 lasers for the district. So there still is one individual who's at $500,000 in lasered coverage, meaning that individual could have up to that amount and the district would owe that. We've taken a look at some of the claims data, some of the other information that we know with respect to this member, and we feel, I'd say, fairly good that the individual probably won't approach the $500,000 for this year, maybe not too dissimilar from what you're seeing here in the current year with the 2 individuals who are lasered. So we firmly believe that the offer from our MTS right now, the 7.5% renewal and the 1 individual at the $500,000 laser, is the best offer for the district. However, again, really looking through this process, we're at least able to realize some negotiated savings and see some offers that were maybe a little bit more competitive, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more competition going forward in future years, to potentially save the district additional costs. Any questions on the stop loss offers, how the stop loss policy works? Again, there's a lot of information here. I didn't want to go through it all in painstaking detail, but I just did want to show the due diligence that the district went through for this process.
Good. So the Avalon is more expensive, but if this one person uses up,
If the one person uses up
So
that
that's
full
our-
500,000,
then it
the
costs
Avalon
us-
could be less expensive. The one item I'll note is Avalon's initial proposal didn't have any lasers, but they did disclose that you'd have to essentially go through a disclosure process if you agreed to go with them. And during those disclosure processes with stop loss vendors, they typically ask for any information you know with respect to claimants who could
So
be
they could
high
add
risk.
it.
So exactly, they
So
could at that point put a
make
laser
the
in,
laser.
and again, since we have a little bit of information on one individual, it's likely you probably see something there.
the question is, why are some double the cost? These are all insurance
It's-
companies,
you're right.
it's their business.
So stop loss policies are, I'll say, a little bit more variable and volatile than standard insurance, just because of the high claimant landscape out there right now. I kind of mentioned earlier how you could have a $1 million claimant and not have to pay for it. I work for a trust with about 4 times the amount of members as the district, who have 3 members who are all over $2 million this year. There's gene and cell therapies that are coming out now that are about to hit the market, anywhere from $1.5 million to $5 million. A lot of these big groups here are starting to protect themselves a little bit more against those high claims. They're basically taking your demographics and saying, given this average age, given this gender ratio, we would expect there could be those type of high claimants out there. And that's essentially where they come to their numbers. So,
And how long has RMTS been our supplier?
I believe for 3 or 4 years at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have a history too.
Yeah, so yeah, history there. It's a little bit different in that we look at stop loss as a little bit more of a commodity. It's an easier move where if you decided to go to another vendor, it's transparent, the employees don't recognize it. But certainly having this in place, it's been a fairly steady year by year increase with them. Any other questions?
Yeah, it was a very thorough presentation. I appreciate
Sure.
all the different options. It's disappointing that they're
Yeah,
completely out of the ball. But I understand, one claim can be a loss
right.
for the whole year for that policy.
Yep.
And
It is
Karen,
risky.
this would be on this month's board
Yes.
agenda? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's it for benefit renewal. Thank you very much.
Do you want me to-
We were,
Okay, there's 2 other pages within our packet that aren't with respect to the stop loss renewal, but we did want to provide as informational items to the group today, just to give you a little bit of an idea of one of these programs we're looking at and that the administration is going to be speaking with the employees about. It's called the Prudent RX program. Flip over to the slide here. But basically, this Prudent RX program is an administrator who works alongside the pharmacy benefit manager that the district has in place, CVS. And what this program does is essentially accesses these manufacturer funds that are available for very high-cost specialty drugs. And what the plan essentially does is it adapts your plan so that any individuals who are on these high-cost specialty drugs, and to give you an idea, you have about 2,000 total members covered under your plan. We're probably only talking about maybe 20 or so members that are impacted here, who have access to these funds because your plan can be designed to be able to essentially use these funds to help cover their costs out of pocket and the district's costs for these drugs specifically. So what this plan does, it kind of comes in behind your insurance and members essentially are able to enroll in it. And what it does is it eliminates their out-of-pocket expense. So right now for a specialty high-cost drug, depending on what plan they're in, they're either paying $125 copay out of pocket or a 10% coinsurance out of pocket, which could be several $100 for some of these expensive drugs. And it takes that number to zero using these manufacturer funds. Additionally, those funds kick in and help cover the district's expenses for these drugs as well. And what this does, more or less, is save the members approximately $175,000 in total out-of-pocket costs, and it saves the plan another $70,000 in total costs. It's kind of a win-win for both the plan and the members. The catch here is it's these programs that these large manufacturers have. Sometimes they come and go, but while they're available, plans are able to access them. We work with a number of different school districts who do access them, whether it's through CVS, Express Scripts, other pharmacy benefit managers. So it's kind of, I don't want to call it a cash grab, but it's this type of scenario where there are these funds that are available that kind of align with your plan to help both members and the plan itself. The big key items here are if you were to institute this plan and put it into place, members who are impacted, and again, you're probably talking about 20 total members, do have to actively opt into the program. They get a letter, a phone call to say, you got identified as someone who takes a prescription that's going to be impacted by this program. You have an opportunity to take your out-of-pocket costs for that prescription down to zero. Do you wish to enroll? They enroll, their out-of-pocket cost goes to zero, and the plan's cost is reduced. The negative impact is if they don't enroll at that point, they could potentially face a higher out-of-pocket cost just because of how the plan is designed to align with these funds. I'll say, we spoke with your PDM specifically, and we've done this again for other groups that we've worked with. When these type of programs are put into place, it might be a little bit of a delay to get some of these members' attention when you send out the letters and have these phone calls. But in situations where if someone were to actually go to the pharmacy and fill it and see a very high cost script, at that point they can make a phone call immediately, enroll in the program, and still access that $0 copay. So it's a plan that has a lot of value both for, again, the member and the district. The keys here are really the communication and just being able to make sure that anyone who's impacted by this has the information and understands that this is a legitimate program. They do have to enroll in it to realize that savings. So we wanted to provide the information to the group here just so you were aware of it. Again, I think the next step really from the administration standpoint is have the conversation and have some discussions with the associations to let them know they're looking at this, understand what the numbers are and the benefits of it, but really clearly communicate just how the program works, and then a little bit of the timeline, which is on the last slide. And essentially what that timeline says is that 90 days out, you have to decide you'd be adopting this. At that point, letters and notices go out to the members who are impacted, and at that point they can enroll in the plan. The timeline also goes through several scenarios where, again, if someone didn't actually enroll during that first wave, the district will get a notice on that, or if that member went to pharmacy to have something filled when they weren't enrolled, there'd be other kind of indications or notifications that would go to them to enroll them in the program. So again, there are some safeguards here, but it is important just from a communication standpoint that members are aware of it, because there could be a sticker shock or a surprise if they go to the pharmacy and they aren't enrolled in the program. So again, wanted to make everyone just aware of it, just to let you know that that's something the district is experiencing.
Is there an additional cost?
So that-
How do they make money?
So that it's a shared savings program. You're right, it's always a good question. It is a shared savings program, so that $175,000 that the members are saving, the $70,000 the district's saving, there's another pot of $50,000 or $100,000 of that manufacturer funds that are coming.
But we
Yeah.
are not funding anything.
Correct. So that's the net number for the district is $70,000 savings and $175,000.
And the people who aren't enrolled will not see a higher copay or anything. It's just those people that.
So if a member's taking it, they do have to enroll, but
No,
if
no,
a
I mean,
member's not taking it, yeah,
There's
exactly.
no
It's
change
not gonna
to
impact them
the
at all.
majority or vast majority of the people.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, the other, outside of those 20 individuals, there's really no impact.
Can you get rid of the PBMs for us? That would save
I
us a lot.
can't work that kind of magic, but,
That's where the real problem
yeah.
is.
Any other questions on that?
Thank you.
That seems-
Okay.
I assume you're in favor of this one. I figured there was some hitch, but we never heard.
Yeah. All right, final item is dashboard.
So we have our dashboard that runs from April 29th to May 12th. Seems like it was far away, April 29th. But we will also have another dashboard coming out after our June meeting, which will be added to the district website by the end of next week. So positions posted between April 29th and May 12th, a total of 12. Positions filled, there were a total of 79. That number looks a little bit high. Some of what causes that number to look a little bit higher is when we have summer positions that we post for one position. We might hire 10 individuals for that one position. We also posted for our ESY positions that we have filled during this time frame. So we had a significant number of positions that we filled between April 29th and May the 12th.
Can you break that out as to who's temporary and who's full-time? So,
I can break that down for you.
yeah, that would be, because this, if someone looks at this, they're, oh my God, we're adding 50 people.
Absolutely.
And that's deceptive. Kind of paints a picture that's not good.
Sure. Resignations, there were 6, and retirements, there were 4. And again, we provide information regarding leave of absences and benefits, and then our recruitment for the district. So I would like to provide you with a little bit of a recruitment update. On Saturday, May 17th, Penridge School District hosted its first ever transportation-focused job fair. It was aimed at attracting candidates specifically for roles in our transportation department. We welcomed 15 prospective applicants who engaged with representatives from both the HR department and transportation department. Throughout the morning, staff were available to provide information, answers to questions, help them with the application process, and provide tours of the department. That was successful. We were excited to have 15 applicants come and visit us that day. Additionally, May 20th, the district held its annual spring job fair, which saw our best turnout in 2 years. We had a total of 75 attendees who participated in the event. 58 individuals expressed interest in professional staff positions. 17 attendees explored opportunities in our support staff roles. The district will be hosting 3 hiring events in the summer. The first event will take place on Tuesday, June 18th from 1:30 to 4:30 at the Penridge Transportation Department. The second event is scheduled for Wednesday, July 15th from 1:30 to 4:30. That will be held at the Penridge High School parking lot. This is a recruitment fair and Touch a Truck community event. So this will combine efforts for community engagement activity along with allowing individuals to learn about opportunities in our districts. The third and final event will be held on August the 6th, again at Penridge High School in the parking lot. This is a support staff job fair, and it is designed to help fill vacancies before the 25-26 school year begins. This event will be a county-wide job fair. So it will be open to other districts from Bucks County to participate, and as of right now, we have 4 other districts in Bucks County that are going to participate in our job fair in August.
So the first 2 are really transportation focused, right?
They are all support staff focused. The first job fair will be at the transportation department. Our job fair that we held on May 17th was outside, so we had some pop-up tents and different, we had a pop-up tent where they could meet with HR, pop-up tent for them to fill out their applications for the computers, and then one for interviews. So as we work through these job fairs in the summer, we're going to hold the same type of idea, so they'll be all outside, and then for Touch a Truck, we'll welcome community members to come to participate in that as well.
What is that about, the Touch a Truck?
What kind of trucks are we?
Yeah.
So we have reached out to local fire departments. We've spoken with a farmer in our community that's willing to bring a tractor for kids to come and take a look at. We'll have the buses there. We'll have police cars there. So we are reaching out to organizations in the community to try to get them involved.
The one where you're inviting other districts,
Yes.
is that like bringing your competition in?
So it's, I wouldn't say that it is. I think it's actually just expanding the applicant pool. We will be advertising all throughout Bucks County. So depending on where those applicants live, they might want to participate or work in their current district, but it also gets people to come here, maybe that live in the Quakertown area and they're on that border of Quakertown and Penridge School District. And so they can meet with both districts to see what opportunities are available and then make a determination which district they would like to apply.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting.
Excellent, good to hear.
How many of those bus drivers did we hire?
So we had all 15 filled out applications, and the transportation department is working with each one of those individuals to.
Yeah, can you keep us updated?
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, our next Personnel Committee meeting is scheduled for August 18th. We're taking a break in July. And there are no other public comments, so I believe that's it for personnel.
Keep it going.
We have public comments for you? I'm assuming nothing.
Anybody else?
No, there's nothing.
All right, perfect. So we're starting the Facilities Committee meeting tonight. Up first, we will be talking about the Breslin Architects Utilization Study. All yours.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Michael Bell. I'm one of the principals with Breslin Architects. I think I was here back in February, and we did an interim update on where we are with the utilization study. So we were engaged by the district to really do a study update. We had done a utilization study for the district back in 2016 and 2017. We were brought on board to update that study. And so we've been working with the district over the last year, working closely with Mr. Dahlberg, Dr. Tallman, and Dr. Barrios on doing an update to the utilization study. So the process we've gone through for this study was we engaged the Pennsylvania Economy League to come on board to do updated enrollment projections. So they were doing their piece, looking at demographic analysis, housing data, reviewing enrollment projections, population trends, birth rates, migration patterns. They completed their study back in February, and that was part of our presentation back at that point, was their findings. While they were doing their enrollment projections, we were distributing questionnaires out to the building administrators, verifying your existing school floor plans, getting an understanding of how your schools are currently being utilized. And then with that data, we were verifying your school capacities using PDE methodologies for verifying your school capacities. So that sort of represents where we were when we were here last time. Since then, we've sort of taken all that data and combined it to really come tonight to talk about, look at what the data is telling us and some of the recommendations moving forward. So just to highlight some of the enrollment information that was presented. So this is historical enrollment from 2015-16 to 2024-25. Over that time, district enrollments have dropped 16.2%, or roughly 1,200 students. Looking at it by grade level, here on the top line is your elementary level students. In your elementary levels, enrollments have dropped 19.2%. In your middle school, which is represented by the orange line there, they dropped 21.1%. And at your high school level, it's not been as significant of a drop, but they have dropped 8.6% over that time. And this is an interesting chart that the Pennsylvania Economy League put together, where they went back and looked at 4 of the previous enrollment projections that Penridge had commissioned, and kind of tracked how they have performed historically. So really here with 2012, 2013 being kind of an outlier of really didn't hit the mark, the other 3 have tracked pretty well with actual enrollments as the actual enrollments have developed. It's important to point out here too is that a lot of times you do the enrollment projections looking out 10 years. Anybody doing the enrollments will tell you for those first 5 years they have pretty good hard data with birth rates and actual birth rates and things that they can use to make those initial 5-year projections. And they're getting those years 5 to 10, they're making more assumptions and using more trending data to make those determinations. But again, looking at the last enrollment projection in 2016, 2017. I know at that time the projections were showing some pretty steep declines in enrollment that I think raised some eyebrows. And as we sit here today, the declines have actually been a little greater than what was projected.
So what happened in 2012 to be so wrong? Because even after 5 years, we were off by 700 students.
We're not sure. We asked that question.
Well,
Yeah.
we
We're not
did the
sure.
report.
Yeah,
Somebody should look at that. We don't want to make that mistake again, right?
right,
Mhm.
right.
Because if you off by 700, it's a big number.
It is, yes.
You have to make big decisions about facilities and things. I would like to understand it. Did you guys do that report?
No, we did not. So I don't have any history.
They look at it. Okay. I never
But
saw it.
generally, if you look, these are done about every 5 years
Yeah.
where we should be. So in another 5 years, I think we should be planning on doing that again. By
I agree with that, but that one study in 5
It's
years.
definitely strange,
Way.
but you'll see that it was on for the first several years, and again,
No.
it begins to go off in that.
No, it isn't. It's off.
Well,
It keeps going up.
it keeps going.
It gets worse every year.
Mhm.
It's on a straight slope.
So that's the historical, a high level historical overview of historical enrollments. And then looking at the enrollment projections that the Economy League brought forward. So looking forward from 24, 25 out 10 years, they're projecting about an 8.1% decline in enrollment district-wide. I think what's interesting here though is that they are, in that first 5 years where they have that better data is really where they're still projecting a lot of that, most of that decline to happen is here in this next 5 years. And then looking at that, again, by grade level, your elementary levels in the blue line on top, K to 5. So here they're showing, again, in the initial 5 years, a bit of a continued decrease in enrollment, but looking out to 5 to 10 years, they're projecting that coming back to about where you are now. So when we look at this from a planning standpoint, for elementary, I think you can pretty much plan around the students you have now. Not including the full day kindergarten conversation, which we're going to have here in a few minutes, but overall your elementary projections look, over the long term, look to be pretty stable. Middle school enrollments, they're looking out 10 years, projecting maybe a 3.3% decline in enrollment, which is modest compared to what you have experienced. And I think what we're seeing at the high school here is they're projecting a 22% decline in enrollment out 10 years. I think a part of that is some of the declines you've seen in elementary and middle are funneling their way into the high school in the coming years. So again, this is some of the process we went through in putting together our package was, we took the floor plans that were developed in 2016, we updated them with any renovation work that had been completed. All those plans were distributed out to school administrators. They provided data back to us with how rooms are currently being used and class size information. All of the plans were updated, and then we verified capacities and PDE methodology. And so just some examples of the plans we developed. So here's Grass Elementary. In red are the grade level classrooms that contribute to PDE capacity. and the purple are rooms being utilized for special education programs. And then here's an example of one of the middle schools with the central middle school floor plan, and then one of the floor plans from the high school. So this is the process we went through and how we came up, went about verifying your utilizations and capacities. So what all that told us is, in looking at your building capacities on the left, so using how your buildings are currently being utilized, these are your building capacities. This is based on Penridge class size guidelines. We compared that to your current enrollments to come up with the current utilization. So you can see at the elementary level, your utilizations are generally in that 66 to 80% window. Target utilization is 90%, so you have a bit of a buffer there. When we look at the middle schools, here you'll see your current utilizations are less than, if you look at district-wide, less than 50%. Looking at South Middle School as an example, your target capacity at 75% utilization is 776, and in 24-25 you only had 386 students. So there's significant excess capacity in your middle schools, and then your high school is currently at about 68% utilization.
Mike, can you briefly mention the difference in the target utilizations, why they're different?
Sure. So, if you look at your full building capacity, that assumes every seat, you've maxed out all your class sizes in every room in the building. That doesn't happen. So at the elementary level, 90% is a realistic target to try and hit that. As an average across your classrooms, you're at about 90% class size. And then, sort of the typicals we use, and this can vary a little bit based from district to district, but typically for a high school, we use like an 85% as a target utilization. In the middle school levels, where you have team teaching, usually the team teaching we look at like a 75% utilization factor. So that's how we ride with those. And again, those can vary a little bit from district to district. But
So the max capacity for each of our middle schools would be around 1,000? That's assuming every seat is filled? I mean,
yes,
if we
the
get
building capacity
90%,
on the left.
we could double the amount of kids in each of those schools without, so like 75%, so.
Yeah, that's
This
assuming that
sounds
you're
like-
using all those rooms all the time.
No, I
When
get it.
teachers are open and people aren't sharing rooms and things like that, so that's why there's so much extra space in there.
Just seems like a lot of kids in the schools that look fairly busy already.
Yeah, they did have pretty high capacities in the past, though. I know that's something that they
Oh,
also
okay.
looked at.
Yeah.
So Brad, can you repeat that? Why is the target utilization much lower?
So for example, in an elementary school, those kids are with their teacher almost all day unless
Yeah.
they're at their special. And, they're gonna go to STEM or they're gonna go to music or whatever. They're gonna have a special during the day. For high school and middle school, those kids might be moving from class to class to class, and the teacher's gonna have a prep in their room, if they have their own room. So that's not gonna be used while
Right,
the teacher's
okay.
having that prep. So you need to actually do have space. What happens though in schools where they get a lot of capacity is teachers don't have their own room. You wind up sharing rooms, and rooms get used all day long. People are just swapping from place to place to place, which is, I don't think it's ideal to have that, but you can use the space at higher rates.
Right.
And then when I was here in February, there was a lot of questions around the use of special education spaces and the utilization of special education spaces. So we took a look at that, and the reality is, when most of your elementary schools were built, they didn't have a need for small group rooms. So there were schools built with 800, 900, 1,000 square foot classrooms, and so that's what you have in most of your elementary schools. So over the years, as obviously the need for individualized learning has expanded, and the need for more special education programs, as those spaces come available, they're being used for those programs. So we just want to take a look at how, what percentage of spaces are being used for those programs. So what we did in the left column here is looked at the total number of full-size classrooms, which again, Department of Education defines a full-size classroom as any room over 660 square feet. Reality is in most of your schools, your classrooms are 800 to 1,000 square feet. So just using Bedminster as an example, you have 26 full-size classrooms in that building. Currently 17 of those are being used for your grade level classrooms. 3 are being used for related arts, so that's STEM, art, and music. And then 6 of those rooms are being utilized for special education programs. So right now, 23% of the spaces in Bedminster, 23% of your full-size classrooms are being used to support special education.
And just as an example, so that would be if you're using it for OTPT, for your IST room, if you're using it for autistic support, and even if you only have 6 kids in there in an 800 square foot room, it's basically being taken out of our capacity.
But you could divide those rooms and get more.
Yes.
When you get to middle school and high school, those percentages, of the spaces being used for special education programs do drop. But I thought this was a helpful analysis to show how the spaces are being used district-wide.
No, it's very helpful, and we really didn't have a handle on that.
Yes. So this sort of brings, this is, sort of paints the picture of what, how your buildings are currently being used and what the data is telling us and the enrollment projections. So now we go into, okay, what's that telling us? So we've developed a couple recommendations based on the data that's been provided, and the first one here is really looking, you have the option to look at consolidating the 2 middle schools, and this is not a new option. The study that was completed in 2016-17, there was an option in there that based on enrollment projections, looking out to 2025, if those enrollment projections materialize, this is something the district can consider. So here we looked at, again, you're highlighting your current utilizations, so 46, 51, 37% in your 3 middle schools. I think it's sort of coincidental, but that your building capacities based on how you're currently using each of the 3 middle schools are almost identical in all 3. But based on the numbers, we believe that you have sufficient capacity where you could consider closing a middle school in the near future. And as since all 3 middle schools have roughly the same capacity, and we're really just looking at the numbers here, we're not making a recommendation here as to which middle school you might consider closing. Because really based on the capacities, you could really choose any one of them, and they would function similarly. So really looking at the projections here, if you were to close a middle school, we took the highest projection for the middle school levels from the Pell's projections out 10 years and divided that in half, which would, if you did it right down the middle, it'd be roughly 715 students in each school, which would put you at about a 69% utilization, which is still below your 75%. Obviously, you're not going to get it that even, but I think with that 69%, that provides you some leeway, because one school's going to end up with more students than another, just naturally.
You said that this was on the high end of the prediction of.
Yeah.
So what? How much off is that from what you?
In looking at Pennsylvania Economy League's projections, if you look in the next 10 years, their highest projected enrollment at the middle school level is actually in 26-27, which is 1,429 students. So they're saying in the next 10 years that's the most number of students they project having at the middle school level.
And that's how much more than the line you showed. I guess my question is, what happens if you're wrong by more than that? And if we make a decision like that,
Right.
we want to know if you're off by 10%, is this not workable? Or is how much flex is there? How wrong can you be before
Right.
we're in serious trouble?
Right.
Well, it's 75% capacity. We have a ways to grow there. I mean, that's our target capacity. But I know that North Middle School in 2011, 2012 had 700 kids in it. So we know that.
Yeah, if the numbers here are right, that's fine.
No, but
If they're off by 10%, and then you're up to the capacity, it just needs a little more thought into.
Sure. Well, I mean, just high
At
level,
some point,
if you look at the
obviously.
target capacities, you're at over, your target capacity at full utilization would be, over 1,500 students. So that would be, I think your buffer's probably about 100 students.
Yeah,
Now, for the next,
That one study was off by a lot more. than
right,
that.
but the next 5 years for middle school, we already have the kids captured right now for the next 5 years
Yes.
at least going through. So we know that's solid, but I think having us do another projection in,
But also,
a few more years.
any decision like this is gonna take years anyway, so
Yes.
you're not gonna, I
Do
don't
it
know, a
overnight.
few years of buffer before you're out in the unknown. It's just, we have to plan for that. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it now,
And
but we have to look
obviously,
at all possibilities.
a decision like this is a significant decision. So, things you have to consider when you make a decision like this is, looking at, facility conditions, including building age and energy costs. Looking at each building and what are some of the inherent deficiencies in the building that maybe can't be corrected. What are the impacts of redistricting to your students? Looking at the enrollments a little more focused on the ascending area of each of the current middle schools. And also, what opportunities are there if you take a middle school offline? How can that facility potentially be repurposed to serve the district in another way or be used for partnerships with other institutions or other service providers? So those are all things that obviously, we're here presenting the numbers, but there's obviously a lot more to a decision like this than just the numbers. And we took a high-level look at costs, working with the administration. So, we would see with this change some increases in transportation costs and then perhaps the need to purchase a couple of buses and add a couple of bus runs. So initially, a couple of buses would be about $320,000 in today's cost. To add some bus drivers, potentially another $100,000. But then obviously you take a school offline, there's significant potential savings there, which, going through this list total up to, potential total estimated annual savings of about $3.3 million that can be realized annually.
And I'm surprised the operational costs aren't higher. That's like electricity and everything, right?
Yeah.
To run the building.
Right. Yes.
Where is that in? What that cost?
That bottom
The
line,
bottom line.
operational.
Operation.
So the next area we wanted to talk about was, the district has made a commitment to doing full-day kindergarten. When we were here back in 2017, that was really still at the discussion stages, so the district's made this commitment. The understanding is that a plan is already in place for this coming year. Each elementary school will have one full-day kindergarten section and one traditional half-day kindergarten classroom. So you still have potentially three kindergarten sections at each elementary school, but utilizing 2 classrooms. So what we first looked at here was, if you don't change how you're using your buildings and you implement this, you're essentially losing a classroom, because that current half-day kindergarten classroom that's serving 2 sections will only be available for 1. So when you look at your building capacities here, you'll see that they've all dropped by 25 students from what was on the previous summary. So you combine that with then also looking at 26, 27 enrollments. We looked at the Pell projections and, pulling some data out of their projections, projecting that you would expect that if you offer full-day kindergarten, you're going to see a bump in your kindergarten enrollments. Right now, the district sees about a 90 to 100 student bump from kindergarten to first grade. So I think there's a expectation that when you offer full-day kindergarten, you're going to see a lot of those students come into kindergarten for full-day kindergarten. So
We currently have about 3 sections in each school of each grade. So we would anticipate requiring 3 sections of full-day kindergarten if we pick up everybody. With a few exceptions. We have some 4 in some spaces, we got 2 in some spaces, but generally it's 3.
So here under the enrollments, this accounts for, in these enrollment projections, bringing in those additional, in this case, 91 students district-wide into the schools, anticipating that bump in enrollment. So with this, you can see the utilizations that, we're comfortably below 90% based on your current usage. In this scenario, really with no changes, Bedminster's actually shown going above that target utilization. Diebler, or not Diebler, I'm sorry, Sailor is starting to flirt with that number, but these numbers, your utilizations have increased significantly from, how they're currently being used.
Yeah, so the three major concerns are definitely Bedminster, Grass, and Siler. That's where we're gonna be reaching maximum capacity.
And that, can you list like how many special ed counselors next to those so we can figure out the free up space? I assume you're, right, if we can divide up,
Yeah, we have,
how does that come in?
yep.
Listed.
So what we looked at is how can we find an additional classroom to replace, if you're losing a kindergarten classroom, essentially because you're going from half-day sections to full day, how can we find that classroom space within your building? So again, the goal would be, I think for planning purposes, to have 3 dedicated full-day kindergarten classrooms in each of your elementary schools. And so what we're looking at here is, proposing some targeted renovations at 6 of the 7 elementary schools that would create small group rooms, provide appropriately sized spaces for special education programs, and free up an additional classroom for use. So I think as Dr. Palmer already highlighted, the rationale is right now, district-wide in your elementary schools, you have 42 full-size classrooms being used for special education programs. Those rooms were designed to support, classes of 25 to 30 students. In most cases, almost all of those rooms are being used by less than 15 students. With a lot of those rooms, some of your programs, you're seeing class sizes of 6, 8, 10 students in rooms that size. So the strategy here to try and find some additional classroom space to support the expansion of the full-day kindergarten is to go into the schools and create some small group rooms to provide appropriately sized spaces to support your special education programs. We also looked at a couple of the schools, as we looked at it, Diebler and Grass both are tight and limited on some classroom space, so there may be some longer term considerations there for some building additions at those 2 schools. And at Grass right now, the stage is being used for the music classroom, which is really not an ideal and appropriate space for that. So a small addition would remedy that. And then Diebler is also just short on classroom. You look at the number of full-size classrooms, Diebler just doesn't have as many as the other schools. I think Diebler, with one of the renovations that was done there, I don't know when exactly, but they already sort of did this. When they last renovated that school, they took some of the full-size classrooms and made those into small group rooms. So kind of what we're proposing here for a lot of your schools is already done at Diebler, so there's not really space there to do it again. So those are I think, longer term considerations. And then obviously as you start to get your enrollments and you look at these utilizations of, right now, based on the projections, we're looking at utilizations between 70 and 89% across the elementary schools. So, you can always consider, rebalancing your sending boundaries for those schools to try and level that out a little more. So, so that what this is showing is basically bringing back those, with these targeted renovations, creating that additional classroom space, with really focusing on trying to have, I think from a planning standpoint, trying to really focus on having 3 sections for each grade level in each school. So basically 18 classrooms in each school serving kindergarten through 5th grade. The exceptions here to that are Diebler. Again, I mean, we're short 1 classroom at Diebler, so there were 17 instead of 18. And Sellersville, I think for several years now, has not been, I think for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they've been operating 2 sections per grade, per grade level. But so here, looking at that, then looking at the projected enrollments with the full-day kindergarten, now these utilizations are much closer to your current utilizations, where we're in that 70 to 89% range. And so we went through each school and just conceptually mapped out how this might be done. And again, this is really a concept of how this can be done. If we're showing a certain room to be divided, it doesn't have to be that room, but we looked at each building and saw how this might lay out. So, this is Bedminster, where we'd be looking at taking 2 classrooms and making 3 small group rooms, and shuffling things around, and still trying to keep all your grade levels grouped together within the building. And again, all these options here, we're not removing any sections from the building, we're not decreasing any we're not removing any special education programs from the building. It's providing the same number of sections to serve the students, just more appropriately sized spaces to do it. So this is Deibler, again, just taking a classroom and dividing it into 2 small group rooms. This is Grass, where again here, the option to create some small group rooms within the existing building. In this option, though, music's still on the stage, so this is where we say maybe there's a consideration for a future addition. Guth, looking at Guth, actually Guth, you have a good number of spaces here, so we don't see an immediate need to do any renovation work here. At Sellersville, again, just taking 1 classroom and dividing it in half to create that additional kindergarten room. Same thing at Saylor and at West Rock Hill. So again, the idea is just to take 1 full-size classroom in each building, divide it in half, and provide 2 small group rooms. And this is something that, again, with your schedule to implement full-day kindergarten, we think could be done fairly efficiently, minus, looking at options for additions. So looking at some potential costs for this, total renovation across the 6 schools here would be about 7,000 square feet. So looking at some hard costs along with some projected soft costs, we're coming up with renovation costs of around $2.9 million. Again, with the addition of full-day kindergarten, the potential to need 7 additional buses, so bringing up total initial expense of approximately $4 million. And then for your ongoing expenses, annual expenses, you have your additional kindergarten teachers as well as your additional bus drivers. So you have an annual expense of just under $1.2 million potentially. And then just looking at a potential schedule of if this is something the district wanted to implement in time for the fall of 2026, kind of working backwards from that, what a schedule might look like to try and achieve that. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions you have.
So we're piloting the kindergarten program, right? So we were talking about that being 3 full sections, but the pilot is what? 1 per school?
For next
Just
year.
for next
For
year.
next year, we have 1 full section at each school.
Okay.
So we have the space right now because the principals, we've moved a few things around to do that. I think realistically, we have to say adding full day across the board, it's gonna take some additional work. So if we don't wanna have people jammed in there and have large class sizes, we're gonna need to do a few things. I think redistricting is something that we really have to look closely at. It hasn't been done in this district in 15 years, and there's been a lot of construction and movement within the district. So I think that's something that we really have to strongly consider to balance these out. If you're looking at those utilizations, you can see it's not the same across the board.
If Sellersville is under, and it's next to Diver.
It's actually right next to grass, so you could move that line over and balance that out significantly. I think Deibler is the one place where we do have a concern that it really isn't that big. It doesn't have that many classrooms. It doesn't have as many as any of the other buildings. And Bedminster that was the last change that took place in Rowan. So I think we'd have to just kind of dig in very closely.
Doesn't Diver touch Sellersville too?
No.
But I'm thinking.
Yeah, Deibler and West Rock. So if you notice the new construction, that we have a lot of units going in up there. All those kids will be going to West Rock, not Deibler. So even though that was like right on the border, we moved the border line kind of over when they built that to say everybody in that development, you're going to West Rock. So
who would actually do that redistricting work? Is that your team or?
Yeah,
Okay.
we take care of it. So it would be, again, a process of
Yeah,
working with a group of people to really do something that is, get the most benefit with the least disruption,
yeah.
I think, of people, and giving people enough time to know that those things were gonna happen. And doing it in a way that is thoughtful, that projects out. So we don't do this. This isn't something you wanna do every 5 years, it's something you wanna do every 10 or 15 years, I would say.
Based on how some are underutilized and some are overutilized, it would make a lot more sense than adding on to a school setting.
Yeah, and there's some decisions that you have to make. You go to Bedminster, they use one full classroom for their IST class, you know, for seeing kids. It's not open all the time, it's not used all the time. That's something we could say, you know what, we're gonna make that a class, we can do IST in a different space for right now. So there's some things we can do without necessarily doing full construction on places. But I think we do really have to look closely at where we would have a need to do construction, considering the fact that these elementary numbers, they're gonna dip a little, but they're gonna come right back to where they were now. So that's what the projection is.
Understood. Overall declining, it's hard to sell expansion.
Yep.
To the public. And I think we do not use our elementary classrooms that efficiently. You all know that. And I saw the number of special education classrooms, and some of them had 10, I think, could. And that's a huge number, so we really have to get creative there.
Any other questions?
No, excellent presentation, very thorough, it really gives us a,
Thank you very much.
yeah, just
Thank
want to
you,
know
Mike.
how far you're gonna be off.
We will find out.
Everything's betting on that. That's off, we're,
2012.
I'll let you know in 2 years.
And if you guys want to read the full report, that is in there, and all of the enrollment stuff is in there, 50 pages of it that you can read through, the graphs and charts and everything.
sounds exciting.
It's great material.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then, moving on, we have a presentation by ICS for the summer of '26 capital projects.
Thanks for having us in tonight, folks. We certainly appreciate all the ability to work with the administration and get to this point. We have done a lot of deeper dives in what we're doing tonight. Tonight's more like an overview of our process, and we're going to bring back information. Some of this contingent upon great work the President's doing, along with the Pennsylvania Common League, understanding the building's capacity, the needs, the kind of the educational vision going forward. Kind of dovetails pretty nicely into understanding the facilities and planning for those facilities' future. So just an intermittent stop here to talk about how we perform the assessment, the planning process, talk about some projects that we have identified conceivably to do for 2026 summer that has kind of a longer lead time run-up. How we identified those, talk just a little bit about the projects that are ongoing right now that we're helping, assisting Craig implement this summer, and then talk about the proposed high school athletics assessment design. So all the information that all the work that we do is at the start is really data gathering, right? So we go out and we walk all the 13 facilities and we talk to the folks there, talk to the building operators. We put out surveys, good enough, Craig was good enough to facilitate that, of the principals, the athletic director at the time, the custodians there, the HVAC folks for the district, and we go just gather a bunch of information initially. A lot of information that's easy for us to see when we're walking around with our heads above ceiling, boots on the ground, walking on roofs and so forth, and some of it is just the institutional knowledge that folks at those facilities have. Right, the things that we can't just read off a plate or observe casually. Things like, we hold water here when it's rainy, or this is really a sore spot, or, this is a concern that we have educationally. We gather that information and we put it into a piece of software that we have called CIP 360 Capital Improvement Planning. It's an online platform, really just a repository of data and a place that we can run scenarios on that data. It underpins our planning, but the planning process really involves gathering all this information, storing it, and then collaboratively working with the administration, the school board, to understand the direction of the district and what's priority and what's not over time. So it really level sets the understanding of facilities so that you can make these decisions and understand where your precious resources are flowing in the future. So as I said, we went out throughout the late winter and early spring here and did a lot of that legwork, gathered a lot of information, and then we put dollars to it, right? So we're in the market, we're pretty consistently doing projects, pretty consistently pulling data for projects that are completed across the area to understand these costs, right? So all these plans are great, but none of them are worth anything unless they can actually be implemented. So a big part of what we do is gather data, identify, put costs to it, mix that in with the collaboration with the district, and chart that path going forward. You can kind of see that laid out in that graphic there. But that's a process that we've undertaken. You know, I guess we're 4 or so months into that. Big step again. We've gotten some of that Pennsylvania Economy League information. Some of you have seen that. We've brought back and integrated into kind of our process. But now with the full report and recommendations, we'll be able to really, drive data, costs, understanding, and the plans that you kind of are undertaking as a district into a capital plan that's laid up, primarily over those first 5 years. You have to be able to see what those, future looks are if you're doing it in this plan. So when we do that, as I say, it's pretty thorough. We're going to look at everything from the accessibility to the building, all the way down to the ages of the actual particular piece of equipment. When was the last major renovation? These schools, many of them are around for quite a long time. So there's some gray area when you say, hey, a building had this set of systems upgraded. Well, what particular portions of that? Inside CIP 360, we look at that granular data, right? So anytime you get to a decision point, you really dig in with the granular. When you're staying back, you kind of have to take it at a 10,000 or 30,000 foot view. So some of what we do when synthesize these into reports is give you that 30,000 foot view. Then try to focus on areas of concern or areas that we have identified from there and find out more and more information along the way. But we went through that process in identifying those 2026 projects that we're going to be showing you. It was hey, these things look like they could be in this area of concern because they've been laid out for us and we know that their expected life is such and such. Let's dig into them, find out more deeply about the costs, find out more deeply about the needs and the conditions, present that to the administration, and have that collaborative feedback to get to the set of projects that we have coming. So it's, again, very data-driven, data and collaborative driven. So when we have those set of summer 2026 projects, it's important to note that you have these larger conceivable plans that you're going to implement educationally. The big criteria, number one, for this first set of projects is, hey, is this going to be duplicative work? Right? Is this work that if the district goes in a different direction, is it going to be wasted money? So that's the first bar that any of these projects had to pass. Is it conceivably something that's going to have to be redone or abandoned in the future? They all met that criteria. Warm, safe, dry. Again, this is an easy way to prioritize things. What are the type of things that are going to keep you out of school? What are the type of things that are going to affect directly your educational environment, right? So you'll see, in slides that will show you the future, and there'll be a little bit coming up here, the life expectancy of different pieces of equipment. Well, the life expectancy of your fire alarms necessarily is a lot different than the life expectancy of your windows, right? Windows generally not going to keep you out of school, right? But your fire alarm not functioning is, or your boiler plant not working, is your roof leaking massively, is something that's going to be impactful. Life safety things. So we had a priority of, hey, let's not duplicate work. And then we shifted into this warm, safe dry, right? Because if you have this big, broad scope of things that you need to do, and no one has the budget to do everything, exactly line by line, you start to prioritize. So we like to use this warm, safe, dry. It really brings to bear the things that are impactful for your learning education environment and the opening of your schools. 2026 summer projects, that's kind of what we brought on to identify along with this capital plan. We went through the process. Over the winter, we need things that can be implemented over the summer, right? And things that can be procured in a reasonable amount of time that we can get done. And again, we're here a little bit earlier than your normal rhythm of doing summer work because we have this process that includes getting this approval, going and designing, soliciting bids, bringing them back, all the qualification steps that go along throughout that, and your ability to look directly into it and make decisions and have us all kind of sit on the same side of the table going forward. So that is kind of the, some of the things I've identified from the administration that was attractive about our process. Challenge with that, got to get moving a little bit sooner, right? If we're going to talk about these things and have us, full transparency on things, we have to be able to move that process along because we can't take shortcuts, right? Public procurement and what have you, right? So we narrowed that down to about, just under a $6 million project, and they're a la carte standalone projects. We say, choose to do this one, you can choose to do that one, you can choose to do that one, right? And it's not going to be contingent upon them all, right? So you do this project, don't do that one, right? And that was part of the reduction process of getting to this, to the budget here. So out of that came these priorities for the 2026 that met all that criteria, right? Not duplicative, warm, safe, dry, procurement, implementation, not affecting the school year, right? So we have generators, very important for life safety, getting your buildings up to code, money well spent, long-term useful things for the district. Domestic hot water, there's going to be some efficiencies found here with some of the antiquated systems, not having to run them year-round necessarily, create that hot water. Tough to operate a building without having hot water. Temperature controls at Siler. Again, this is going to be an item that you can't control your educational environment. The equipment that is there now is out of date, tough to find parts for, tough to replace. It's time to do that on your schedule. The boiler plant, beyond useful life expectancy, we're going to try and save some with some new efficiencies found there. And then the roof, we talked about those, the roof at Central Middle School. We talked about those surveys that we did, and something that consistently came up is the problems that this is causing. So we have consistent leaks there, consistent problems. We think we have a good approach to doing this with some of the preliminary work that we've done in talking to roofing contractors and inspections, the ability to replace it and get yourself 30 more years out of it without going down to the deck necessarily and removing some of this insulation. So we're hopeful to find efficiencies there, right, and to do it in a manner that's judicious with the limited funds of the school district. So we feel that they're pretty good projects. And I'm not sure I'll over here. Yeah, you can barely see that a little bit. So this is a life expectancy chart of these different building systems. Again, 30,000 foot view. This isn't the specifics. There's hundreds of lines of information that compose these. And you can see the blue squares that we have around these different ages, right? If they're in red, that means that they're 5 years past their expected useful life, right? So we're hitting areas that we know that are problematic and areas that we can expect to fail as time goes on. So these, again, are meeting the needs and turning those red boxes to green as time goes on for the district. I know this is a lot.
Could you add
We
the
get
key
way
there?
more in depth to this. Pardon me.
I think there was a key on that, with the green and the yellow. Is it on a
Yeah.
different
So
slide? Or?
again, we have a much more expansive. You saw that expansive presentation. This was kind of just to give you a little taste of that without going into the great depths of that. I mean, happy to expound on any of these things, and we're certainly going to come back. The plan is, integrate this present stuff, have a little bit more refining of that information that we've gathered, the direction from the district,
Okay.
and then come back and give you like that full report. We're saying, hey, here's a couple pages and pictures about Dibler. Here's a couple pages and pictures about Siler or Bedminster or Sellersville. Give you a bunch of information about those individual ones, and then from there, broader look, right? And then our first shot at maybe that 5-year or 10-year capital plan. A very collaborative process. And the important thing to know about that is you see it here tonight, like you get a projection 5 years later, it's maybe not as good as you thought it might be. The beauty of having that institutional knowledge kind of carried on in that CIP 360 software is like, hey, we can take another set of priorities from next year another set of assumptions, another set of directional goals for the district, and layer it right on top of a different scenario in there. When you get it just in a book, it can easily sit on a shelf and get dusty, right? You lose a key personnel, something changed in the district, what happened? You can go in there and find these things out and kind of chart that course going forward. So, yeah, there's a lot of information, as you know, Mr. Word's backing this up, we'll be able to detail, but at first blush, met those criteria.
John, can you just walk us through the different colors?
Sure, yeah. So, all these different systems inside the building have useful expected life, right? And there's industry standards, one's from ASHRAE, right, pretty well-known institution, that says, you know, if you have this type of piece of equipment, right, so we're saying like classroom HVAC, these are the things that push out the conditioned air and give you, the learning environment. They say, hey, these things are typically gonna last 20 years, 25 years, whatever, right? So the colors in green mean that they're within it, right? The yellow means they're within 5 years of approaching it, right? The orange means that they are within 5 years after their expected life. And the red means that they're beyond 5 years. So if it's 20, it's year 25, it turns red. If it's 20 to 25, it's orange, yellow approaching 20, and then before that, it would be green. Right, so it's kind of, this is, again, a simplification of a lot of underpinning data and a way to kind of look at your portfolio of schools on one sheet. In fact, for a district this size, if we were going to dig into this in a presentation mode, we'd cut this in half, right? We put the 7 elementary schools on one slide, and maybe middle schools, high schools, and the couple auxiliary buildings onto another one. Dig in a little bit more deeply as we have in the past to give you information about it, and then I've made this mistake too many times now. To introduce some of our team members. Bob Hunter, longtime facilities manager, Schools of Philadelphia, and very familiar with the district, very familiar with Craig over time, implementing some of these 2025 projects. Cody West, development engineer for us at ICS, really underpins all the understandings of the opportunities for these buildings and underpins this whole process. New to our team is Mr. Doug Taylor, who probably needs no introduction around here, right? Longtime facilities guy, longtime implementation guy, very knowledgeable about where all the rocks are hidden here at the district. He's a Bedridge guy. Mom lives up the street,
Yeah.
right? So knows all about these buildings inside and out, probably has as much or more institutional knowledge as anybody in the district at this point. So we're glad to have him join the team in the last couple weeks. Super key for us going forward. These are the guys that are underpinning all that information. These are the guys that are going to be designing, helping to design the teams and certainly leading the charge when it comes to a great implementation. So this would be a budget outlook. Each of those different items kind of roll up into their own line items, and the other ancillary costs of construction that you're probably familiar with over time, coming in at a budget of just under $5.6 million, and we would implement these in coordination with the district, design them and implement them either through design to build public procurement or through cooperative purchasing like CoStars. There's definitely some advantages to the different approaches, the different allowed approaches, dependent upon the district's desires and the particular scopes of these different items. So yet to be determined exactly how it's going to go, but we would manage the process from here of designing these things and then bidding them, bringing them back in, qualifying those, work through the award with you, and then work through and manage the construction, give those updates, manage all the paperwork. We do construction management, used to be software called Procore, and so many of these successful projects are born out of having proper documentation when you're dealing with the contractors and the vendors and developing schedules and so forth, disseminating information. It's good for holding people accountable. It's good for having at a glance understanding and it's good for managing ourselves through punch lists and executing these things in timelines that they need to be, right, to not disturb the educational environment, right? It's a big number, $6 million. You're nothing to sneeze at. You guys spend a lot more money on your educational environment. We don't want this to impact that. But we want it to impact it positively. We don't want it to impact it as a nuisance or anything towards that. So, attendance timeline, we're here tonight talking. We have a board meeting next week, and it would be great if we were able to move forward and start that design process. As I mentioned, process is a little drawn out when we go through it this way. It's collaborative and transparent and so forth, where we're going through and getting in here and refining the scopes of these things, refining the bid documents, putting them out on the street, giving options, giving alternates such that we can meet budgets or identify other scope items that might be added if they come in at the right cost so we can hit the right numbers. So kind of a lot of different moving parts to that process, going through all the approvals of the different levels of design, right, schematic design, all the bid documents out and returned, documenting that process, managing all those bids, and then ultimately implementing a successful project looks something like that, right? So we're out in the late fall into the winter, giving approval, making sure that we're getting the good choices of contractors out there, by being ahead of that last wave of folks kind of scrambling to get into the summer of 2026, and a completion time for school to start next fall. Anybody have any questions kind of on that timeline or any of the, how we got to where we're at now? Make a little bit of sense?
No, I do.
Hopefully.
So you want us to approve $6 million at the next board meeting, or
Well,
is
so
there an
this
amount
would
to
be the-
design, or?
This would be the approval to design and go out and begin this process, right? So there's some costs.
What is that cost?
Pardon?
What is that cost? Because that's what we're going to be approving.
Yeah, so I think it's $680-ish thousand, and that wouldn't all be spent immediately. That would be part of the design process, and part of that is the actual implementation and construction management of it. There's some contingency in there, design contingency, construction contingency. There's some reimbursables that are in this budget. So no, you're not going to approve this, but you are going to approve the design agreements to start this process.
And that's what?
It's $689,042.
Is that all?
It's on the it's on your attachments.
Yeah, no, and the other contract.
Yep. The two documents that start with AIA.
And that's for all the projects, the design, or are some of these simple projects that we don't require design, or?
Yeah, so some of them, they're all gonna be designed at some level, and certainly some of them are less design intensive than others. But the plan would be to go out and approximate what the best path forward is at all these locations. And then again, it's gonna be having site services folks there to ensure that the work is being done appropriately, the parts and pieces are assembled appropriately, and to insulate the school from having contractors interacting with staff and so forth. Right, so then we would bring back for approval each of those packages
Separate.
at some point, in the middle of the winter.
Craig, what's your thought?
I think they're all projects that the school district needs, that we looked at these as they were presented, and I looked at them with my team, and we agreed these are all relevant things that need to be looked at.
Is there anything we're missing, or it's not on there?
No, well, based on the report, no, I think that we've captured the things that were highlighted as initial things that need to be considered to be approached first.
What, you mean their report?
Yes.
Oh. But you had input into this, right?
I did,
Okay.
yeah, I had input in putting together what is here today.
Okay, so it wasn't just
This is a
collaboration.
Yeah, this was
This
something
is a
we discussed.
subset of a broader set of items that could have been implemented. Right, we worked with the administration pretty closely to get to this list.
There were some things that were pushed off.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to know the process to understand what we include.
Yeah, and I think the next step is these folks will be coming back at the end of the summer to spend more time with us to actually then look at the actual long-range capital project plan.
Yeah, no.
But these were things that we were able to pull out, priorities to do that in the summer of 2026.
Yeah, so your normal rhythm, just starting a little bit earlier, so we don't miss
No, I
that
think that's
summer.
essential. I mean, I agree that
Say it one more
once
time.
the prices go up, the longer you need
Yeah.
time, and then you get less selection of contractors.
But you had mentioned that you also meet with all the building facility, the people working in the buildings
Yes.
too. That if your algorithm kicks out something and they say, yeah, I hear you, but really what is a big problem for us is this, you would adjust that in your system.
Well, again, we're gonna gather a bunch of information, and it's not deducing what the priority is. When someone gives us something like that,
Yeah.
it's a qualitative thing, that's gonna be something that goes in there as part of the discussion. It's not gonna say, oh, this doesn't matter, because, we don't appreciate their opinion, or we don't think that it's relevant. It's gonna become part of the log or the understanding.
Yeah, so I mean, like
that
you were able to enter that into,
The CIP 360.
yes, right?
That's exactly right. So all
Yes.
that information it becomes part of our report, but it also gets cataloged inside the software such that when we're looking at the individual items, we're looking at this building, we have all these understandings, right? And then they have to be managed over time, clearly, right? Because they're, that's gonna be old news if we do some of these projects. Some of the things are. But the decision-making process about what gets prioritized is going to be really a bit of art, right? We have a lot of data here, including the data from those folks' surveys and inputs and the principles and so forth. And that's going to become part of the understanding that forms the basis for a decision
Yes.
on anything, right?
And then obviously these are wear and tear and looks like they've been around for a while. If there are things that break that we still have like a warranty under and stuff like that, those would get fixed along the way under the assumption that we're not gonna need
Yeah, there's all, I mean, you have to make
monies
this
to
budget
fix it,
for doing
right?
other things.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah. These would be, capital projects rather
right.
than,
Well, okay, I guess that's the
Yeah.
definition of it, right?
yeah. Put it on it.
Yeah.
So how did you arrive by these numbers? I'm sorry.
The numbers up here are, the budgetary numbers are based upon market information,
Okay.
right? And then the other ones are some, making some assumptions for those different lines. The cost that, we arrived at for that agreement are born out of the professional service agreement that we have with the district that lists different percentages for implementing and designing different projects.
So then we'll see how right you are when you come back with the quotes.
Yeah, for those budgets, yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is, right,
Well, it's
there's
important.
a lot of unknown, right? But we do we're implementing projects pretty regularly, right? And the other point of this is too, like, when we identified this subset of 7 or so projects there, we've undertaken some legwork to talk to prospective contractors, talk about the scope, and get some rationality, some sanity checks on some of these things. Are they perfect, those numbers exactly going to come back? We'd hope to be pretty close to the total there, but there's definitely going to be some variance. And that's the important part of the understanding that gentleman over here being, but we're going to have alternatives in there that are going to be able to fill in like, oh, we're at 4.8 and we really could do these other things, and we have these alternates as part of our bid packages that we can implement. Or we could say, hey, we're at 6.5, the district doesn't have this money just sitting around. We can defer this, or we can refurbish this piece of equipment, and maybe it's 20 years instead of 35, what have you, right? Necessarily, you can make some of those, beg, borrow, steal type of trade-offs to get to whatever budget number that you'd like to get to, within reason, right? But you want to give yourself some flexibility. You want to say exactly this, exactly. I mean, you want it to be tight, right? But you want exactly this and an option for doing it this way, an option for doing it that way, an option for adding this particular piece on or whatever. And that way you get closer to your budget. You also get some of the economies of going through this process, right? So if you're going out, we're going through this process, spending some money, we might as well try to squeeze some ancillary benefits out of it. And that's what we try to do as part of the bid process, is figure out where the best things, the best asks are to give us some flexibility, right?
Yeah, I could add it. So when we actually, come out and perform the work, we're gonna do some physical investigations as well, right? So we have these numbers that are based upon the team's review of these facilities, but when you actually start a project, you can dig in deeper. For example, on the roof, we're gonna take a look around. There's some counter flashing or something that is required on the wall because, there's brick and there's tie-ins, then we're gonna take a look at that and see if there's through wall flashing conditions or anything else that might be, tied into this project. If there are, then we'll come back and we'll report to Craig and team about some of those adjustments we'd have to make based on those findings. But these are, very solid numbers headed into the project.
Yeah, that's a good, very, very well said. And part of the process is obviously, is also regular meetings during this design development, right, with the administration, with Craig, to have the understanding of, hey, we're finding out this, we have to set up bids to come back to look this way, right? So we're not waiting until game day to make those, kind of approximations and updates to this budget, right? So 2 months from now, the budget's gonna look a little bit different, right? It's gonna look like that, it's got another column next to it with a lot more information that we found out, either from more investigation, asking more of these vendors before we go out to bid, or information that we're gathering from the market for other projects.
So I see like the roof is the biggest chunk,
Yeah,
and that's just under 30 years old right now, with
Yeah.
that recoating, resealing in between. So
Yeah.
there's nothing
So this is a-
warranty left on that, even for like 2 more years,
I wish.
that we can squeeze out.
20.
right, so, what
I can
is
speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that roof was installed in 1998,
Okay,
and it had a 10-year warranty.
alright, well, then that answers my question.
And it has since been recoated, which had in 2015, and it had what they call a 5 and 5 warranty. So 5 years, 10 years, depending on how you look at it. So that warranty has just come to expire,
Got it.
and it's a roof that is, like you said, just over, well, however many years. I always lose a decade when I'm going back to the.
Yeah, it's like 27 years.
I always lose a decade when I go
Yeah.
to the 90s. So,
Don't we all?
yeah, and so we're at the point now where there's a roof with known issues.
Yeah.
Preliminary reports indicate that there's a lot of the roof, like potentially more than half of the roof, that can be, more or less retrofitted, refurbished, whatever you want to call it, where we're not tearing it all the way down to the deck.
Right.
But there are portions that are expected to need to be torn all the way down to the deck in order to get a 30-year product,
Got it.
warranted 30-year product. So at the end of the day, that's our budgetary number for exactly what we described, right? A 30-year roof. And if it's lower than that, then that's either, like John said, money back in the district's pocket, or money to do some of these additional, projects, additional scope associated with these projects.
And we know that the roof's old and failing, and we've done core samples.
Yeah, how do we prove that it's, it has a few leaks? Is somebody fixing one every day? How do we know that the roof, it's something I deal with
It's a
all the
lot
time.
of leaks.
There's a lot of leaks, yeah.
What's
I
a
mean,
lot?
so
How many times have we been up there to repair it this year, or things like that are important?
within the last couple of rainstorms we've had, every single time.
What type of a roof is it?
Repairing a leak, multiple leaks.
Who installed it?
We've had leaks that have caused other problems that we've had to fix. So, by doing this, we would be stopping a lot of issues from occurring.
Yeah.
Was it, modified bit as a roof? And for this roofing replacement, is that just roofing replacement, or are we doing edge-to-edge warranty? Is that
These are
included in that?
30-year
Edge-to-edge, so all the
warranty.
flashings, all the drains,
Correct.
everything, right?
Yes.
Right.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
On your last slide with all the colors,
Yes.
and I appreciate that because it helps me. You had 3 columns. One under air distribution,
Mm-hmm.
okay, classroom HVAC
Mm-hmm.
and lighting. they're all pretty much in that red-orange area.
Yeah.
What determined you to pick your list out of those high criteria components?
Right, so, these different pieces of equipment, like lighting, right, like lighting at their expected life expectancy, right, they're not all just gonna turn off, right, they're become more and more maintenance problems, they're gonna be tough to replace the parts, it's gonna be a headache maintenance-wise. That's not something that would qualify or that would warm, safe, dry. But you're not gonna close school because a couple lights don't work. It's gonna be painful for you, it's gonna affect the educational environment. So we're enlisting this first set of, hey, let's find out what we can do in the short term before we set forward a path, right? Or something we can marry into a longer term project like LEDs that have good payback or something like that, right? You're also getting into the roof and stuff. And
Okay.
So for lighting, right? The classroom and air distribution are married pretty tightly to larger projects as well, and particularly when you come to the elementary schools and some of the decisions that the district could conceivably entertain for air conditioning or something like that going forward. So there are bigger questions about directionally what type of decisions you want to make. So we're not going to go and say, hey, you know, Bedminster or pick one, you know, at Siler or something like that. We're not going to go, or Sellersville, 27 years for the N units inside the classroom, or say they're 27 years old. We're not going to make a recommendation to replace those things, not knowing necessarily what the decisions are going to make in a broader scope for the district, right? So these are decisions that come before the larger decisions that are kind of lower hanging fruit, right? The ones that we've identified that you would do regardless of the other decisions that you make for the district. These would be not wasted money, right? If we went in and did some work on one of these particular items and then you came back in, you know, a year later and said, oh, we're going to close this school, or we want to add air conditioning, conceivably we do something that would be wasted effort, right? Or effort that would be more efficiently packaged with broader projects, right? So if you're talking about, you know, doing some work at these schools to accommodate for full-day kindergarten, you put up walls and so forth, you get in the ceiling, you have to make some adjustments to your HVAC systems. That's the type of stuff that you wouldn't want to go and redo a building and have everything in the ceilings brand new. What do you want to go in there and do?
Well, that brings up a great point,
Yeah.
because I didn't see anything in your other description that talked about reconstruction of existing space to accommodate our kindergarten program.
Yeah,
I didn't see any information about that
yeah,
in your $6 million project cost.
right. So that's not, these are summer capital projects and are kind of outside of the scope of broader decisions that you need to make. And the reports that you saw tonight, that's not information that we possess. So now that we have that information, it'll be integrated fully into the capital plan and the outlooks. And that's part of the collaboration with the district that goes on between now and we actually come in and present it. That's why we have a lot more information than this, right? But it's not in a format and with the understanding of these broader decisions that the district has to make to present to you. So if we go back, say, to this slide here, data-driven and collaborative, right? The first bullet that we have here, demographic enrollment capacity studies. Got that tonight, right? So those are part of the things that go into the mix when you're making these longer-term decisions, rather than like, hey, what are the things that we can do that are beneficial to the district, that is part of this warm, safe, dry, that are achievable, meet some sort of budget, right? And it isn't wasted money. So it's precisely that reason for all those qualifications, for the choices that we made with the district.
It's conceivable that there's change. Yeah. Based on the projects you outlined now, based on what Bob said. And it's going to change, right?
They have the ability to do
We
that.
can't do all of that. So how do we adjust that? And does that, you know what I'm saying? Say we want to spend $500,000 on redoing classrooms.
Right.
And we're going to need to drop something. And I don't want to design something we're going to drop. Like if we start that process now. How do
That's why we really picked the number at 6 million, because we thought we wanted to leave some room in case there are needs for full-day kindergarten that come from that.
So that would be an efficient.
Yes, and if there are any needs that come from the study that they're gonna talk about, that's about athletics. So we really wanted to, which we really pared back, because when we first looked at our list, it was more of $9 or $10 million list. So we pared back to what we brought here, knowing that the future could be that we need to incorporate the suggestions that came from Breslin for full-day kindergarten and whatever suggestions come out of the athletic study. So we tried to give ourselves some room and have some leeway there for the board to make some more decisions as we get more information and move forward with kindergarten and athletic.
What do we have budgeted next year?
So the transfer into capital is $6 million, but the capital fund now has about $12 million. So this would really, if we spend a year what we're transferring in, we still have that $12 million. So there's still room there to do these other things, and then look at the future as we move forward and get to their 5-year plan, and then as we transfer that money each year, come up with that step-by-step, year-by-year process of doing those projects as we move forward. So it's really trying to build it.
I'm just trying to figure out if you're not gonna raise taxes every year to support this type of development.
Maintenance.
I'm just looking at it from
Well, that's why we need the
50,000 square foot.
We need the long-range plan. as
Oh,
far
there's
as-
no doubt about it.
What's that?
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I just get
Good
concerned when I
point.
see
Yeah.
one school where you're working on a boiler system, and it's one of the elementary schools, and I'm going, wait a minute, the rest of them probably all have the same boiler system.
Yeah,
Because
different.
they're basically built around the same timeframe. I just.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel
at
like
least we're getting a
most of what we
handle
have
on how
coming
much
is
we're gonna have to spend and
updating
what,
our equipment.
it's nice to know what's
Mhm.
near, and that doesn't mean we can't extend.
Well, I
the
think this
usage
is,
of it.
this is extremely important, and you have to have it. And I applaud your work that you've done. It's just that I wanna make sure that we're spending our dollars correctly.
Yeah.
And I get concerned, I mean, a roof is a roof is a roof.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way around it. But why one school gets a boiler versus the other school doesn't get a boiler? Why is that the case? Is that because one boiler system's 10 years younger, or, I just don't know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again, they come up as reds and yellows, or
Right.
reds and oranges.
yeah, so I mean, that's part of the work that we're doing with the administration is to take kind of, the more granular understanding of these things, identify areas, and then discern what the best, the next seven on the list is. It's part of that process. But, that is a huge concern, right, is, what about this one and what about that one and so forth. So, and to your point about designing things that you have to implement, we feel pretty strongly that most of these things will have to be implemented, whether this next year or the year after that. So at the end of the day, you'll still have design documents and so forth for them. You do it next year, you do it the year after. You're not starting from zero. You're gonna have design documents and go through that process. Again, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely like 6 million, significant amount of money to operate these facilities. Some of the guidance is that you're 1.5% to 3% of their worth a year. And you know how much building schools now costs. It's insane, right? So the numbers get pretty big when you have a portfolio of 7 and 3 and 1, right? 7 elementaries and 3 middle schools and 1 high school, and a tremendous amount of square footage to maintain. It ends up in the, double-digit millions of dollars based upon that kind of rule of thumb. Not that everybody does that all at one time, but it gives you kind of a long-term understanding of costs. So in order to maintain these, you guys have spent a significant amount of money over time. You're gonna have to continue that process and then identify opportunities to bring, larger projects kind of to bear as time goes on.
How does this, this is probably more a question for Sean and Craig, but how does this balance against the previous 5-year, 10-year? Like why, looking back at this to say like domestic hot water for diagram grass, 24 or 20 years, like how was this not caught earlier was it not on the old, like on SiteLogic's 5 and 10-year plan? Like did they miss it? That
Can't answer that.
we don't have any
We didn't have.
Yeah, we didn't have a plan.
We didn't have a plan. Yeah, we
What was going on?
No, I mean, there's one thing, we were always kind of flying blind as far as capital projects are concerned, and we find out in the spring what we want to do, or, for the next year, and we never were able to look years ahead, so I appreciate what you're doing, at least gets a handle on what's out there.
Try to get the level set.
Yeah,
right?
because when you look back, it's a bumpy road on capital projects. Some years we spent 12, some years we spent 3, and, I don't think we're neglecting the district, but,
Well, you're gonna be part of the process of making decisions based upon the data going forward. And that's capital improvement planning software. We'll have access to that to go in and look at the data, look at the assumptions, look at scenarios. Like it's maybe, you're better off just looking at it than trying to interact with it, right? But you'll have access to it. Like it's information you'll be able to see and, hopefully understand. We try to synthesize that thing, try to put your thoughts and our collaboration into the product that comes out of there. And again, it's tough to hide things, over 10 years when we're looking this closely at all the buildings, right? People may look at it as like, hey, we're never doing that, it's X $100 million. And that's not the point, right? The point is to understand that these costs exist, right? And some of them can be deferred. Schools are very good at deferring different things. It's just more data, more information, you have access to it, right? We all do.
my only concern is using these averages
I know.
as because if you take care of your product, these are people who don't take care of their, don't do the maintenance, they last less, and then, so you come up with these averages, and I just don't want to use that as a rule of thumb to, like, oh, we should start
Totally
replacing
agree.
them. So, because we take good care of our stuff, and it should get a lot more than the average life of these things. So
Yeah,
that-
it's unquestionably too. There's a lot of red on there, buildings are functioning. Right, they definitely are. It's just where are you gonna apply your capital? Because it's gonna cost money to keep these things going over time. Where is it best to spend? And like we talked about with developing this initial set, like, all right, there's some key things at a high level that identify this thing. The other point is that we did walk buildings, we did talk to facilities folks, we talked to the HVAC folks, so it's not just purely an academic exercise. So from there, as we lean in further and refine those things, find out more about the project, we find more about the particulars of it, and understand whether it's worthwhile to do or not. But you can't look at everything at that level at a first blush, right? You have to start with some set of information, reduce, focus, develop even more refined understanding, and use that to chart course.
Which I think it's important to note also that it is a dynamic plan, right? So Craig could say a boiler is scheduled 3 years out, starts giving him a hard time, right? So then we have to look at next year again, move that boiler ahead and the other boiler back, and make those adjustments to your report.
I like the colors, because I feel like it's eye-opening. Obviously, we know not all of them are gonna, I'm not gonna crash the same year, but it's raises awareness that these are buildings that need constant work, and will always need constant work.
Yeah.
I think
I
that,
mean, everybody knows that they spend money at their house. It's not maybe as regular as this, but you have thousands of people coming down these buildings all day.
Mhm.
And similar to your own kids, they all have the most respect for them. So
Yeah, I mean, I like that, even like the boiler question that was asked, it looks like Bedminster did have some work done recently, so that one is okay. Like,
yeah,
we can see that even though all the buildings were built around the same time, they aren't in the same state.
yeah.
So-
Very true.
no, I mean, and I agree with Ron, like, I don't wanna just look at averages and assume for the worst. And, plumbing fixtures, there's no reason to change them.
Yeah, and that's an average number.
Right,
As
that's an
Kevin
average
pointed out
number.
in some of our other meetings.
I
That
look
isn't
at,
every fixture in the building.
right,
And again, it doesn't quite meet that warm, safe, dry criteria. If
I
you're
just
doing
look at it.
something else there, you're looking for efficiency, or there's some reason to pack that in, right, ADA, what have you. That's the type of thing that can be packaged together in kind of a broader scope project, where you get some of those efficiencies, because you're in the building and you're doing construction, or what have you.
yeah. I just look at like things like generator, heating plant, some of those like bigger single items that are, heating boiler for West Rock, the generator for Bedminster and West Rock. Like, I mean, it's just they're running, but we know that they're running inefficiently. They're like single items. They're not. It's not really an average. You're not pulling averages for a generator in a building. So
Yeah, definitely, right, yeah.
So that's where, I was like concerned that how do these things slip through the cracks that we're at 37 years for Bedminster's generator? Considering that's a life safety thing, that should have been addressed years and years ago. So I appreciate everything. I think it's great to be able to get this overview and to be able to work forward on that.
Well, plus the big ones, like the roofing, we could see we're handling Central, but it looks like the high school and Dival are not far behind. And we need to start planning for it now, because that's gonna be millions of dollars.
Yeah, and I think the district is also getting a more in-depth, very technical look
Yeah.
at all the roofs, and you have kind of a understanding of that over time, and, to the earlier points, what can you defer, what can you get another 5 years out of, right? So you have professionals come out there, do some testing, and give you those approximations, and that's the type of thing that, going back to, hey, this is high-level views, that's the boots on the ground, very technical understanding that can underpin sound decisions. Right, so that's been part of this process, something that we suggested, and the district has taken us up on, is digging deeper into those understanding of roofs.
I also think it's important to note that you're just looking at a piece here. Once you do get the full report, you will be able to see real deep actual construction costs, what the projected numbers are, what the systems look like this is just a quick glance over, but you'll be able to see the systems broken down by category. It'll give you a better understanding overall of what the big picture of the forecast looks like.
What is it? This is kind of like a Cliff's Notes, right? You still got to read. You got to read it and understand it. We try to put it in ways that can be easily digested, and then the data behind it that backs it up. It gives you the depth of understanding if you so choose. Mm-hmm. Right? And we're certainly going to know those things before we go down the road with any of these projects.
So more for my education, because obviously, every year the board is saying, this is what we can use for capital. But when you're looking at things and you're planning, what would you then switch? Do we have a maintenance budget too that we're like, all right, we're not completely replacing this, but that means we need to keep some money in maintenance for lighting or for
We do have a maintenance budget, and so a lighting replacement in a building is most likely not something we would do out of the maintenance budget. We would do it out of the capital budget.
No, I mean, if we're not replacing it, but then that
yes,
means we're probably going to have to replace some
yes,
individual ones.
Yes,
yeah.
that would come out of the maintenance budget.
Maintenance, okay.
Or if we have a boiler down, and we had boilers down last winter, the repairs out of the maintenance budget.
Got it.
So we capture parts and repairs into the budget and plan ahead for it, and we'll try to project what, based on years prior, what we use to keep things running and had to correct issues, and we try to plan ahead for that based on what we're utilizing and what's newer and what's older.
Great.
So that all goes into helping us make those decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's an inspiring slide. It definitely gets the juices flowing as far as people starting to think about stuff. So folks tend to like it, even knowing the limitations, right?
That's the important thing to realize is they don't make decisions off of that.
Yeah, no,
it's just a snapshot and it shows you what's going on.
Yeah, reducing into something that's more bite-sized. When we talked about the schedule, should you choose to move forward, it would look like this. If there was some sort of delay, it would just push this thing out and have some of the challenges you might see bidding a little bit later. So moving forward to the high school athletics assessment, basically the main gist behind that is the need conceivably for another athletic field, what that will look like, where it might go. But in concert with that, understanding all the other pieces, parts and pieces of an athletic complex that you might want to entertain, everything from netting to protect the transportation facility over there, to some of the visitor press box facilities, to understanding about plumbing and drainage and so forth, code reviews and so forth. So that would kind of be the broader scope, conceptual design look at this as what are the possibilities, what are the constraints, what are the considerations And then further than that, what's a more realistic look budgetarily about implementing these things, right? So this is gonna get you to a point where you can make a decision like, hey, this seems viable to go down this path, let's design that, right? Rather than kind of starting from a broad, well, a field costs X. I saw that from some other district somewhere or some other information. So we're trying to get closer to approximate what the cost of doing something here in specific locations at this campus would be, and also to understand what the opportunities might be, from our partner for design and Schrader Groups, very accomplished in that manner, and T&M Associates from Civil, to understand, things like code, things like drainage, and we work all together to develop those budgets, develop implementation timelines and possibilities. At the end of it, you get kind of a schematic design, and you end up, maybe thinking about, well, you could phase it this way, or you could phase it that way. So those are the type of things that we would bring to you through this report process. Again, that's separate than facilities condition assessment, separate again from implementing these projects. Partner with T&M Associates and Schrader Group. About an 8 to 12 week timeline on that. So, we get moving on this. It'll be sometime in the early fall. We could expect to have a pretty good understanding of what your options might be. So that's the proposal that's into the district. I think everybody's probably seen that. Not to exceed $39,800. That's for all the services.
And the initial proposal came in and it was a few thousand higher, so the pencil was sharpened. So I think this study here is very important. Obviously, sports seasons are over right now, but typically when I go to my office after a board meeting or committee meetings, our kids are out there practicing 8, 9 o'clock at night. So there's a lot of utilization on Hellman Field. Lights, has turf. So what this study will do is it'll provide options about, can we have 2 additional fields, one field with lights, one field with the track, but there's definite demand for field time. So we could have 2 practices going simultaneously or 2 athletic contests going simultaneously. So we think that we can help us make an informed decision. And I would anticipate we'll have a committee next year, a new director of athletics, and I'd like to commission a committee to take a look at athletics, and this will aid and complement that study to see what is possible and what's a recommendation we can make to the school board, and what's we can afford and what makes sense. But there's definitely demand here, and in my travels, there are a lot of parents who bring these topics up about athletics, and so we're not making a commitment tonight, but the commitment we're asking for is just to have this study commission to help us make an informed decision, or help us make a recommendation ultimately in the future.
And can we do rentals to outside the community groups for
Yes.
sports?
Yes.
We have a rental agreement?
Yes.
Do we charge them?
Some people say we charge too much.
Yeah, sure.
Can we get the rental agreement?
Yeah, it's
Is it-
actually on our website, but
Is it on?
I'll ask Mrs. Schuler to send you.
Perfect, thanks.
Angela, your feedback from parents, is it quality of the fields or condition?
Some of it's quality of field, some of it's our athletic program as a whole. I've had numerous meetings with our stakeholders who believe that we have a robust, like the Green Jackets, for example, very, very robust program, and they want to see our athletics here do much better in all sports, because there are great scholarship opportunities for our students. Ultimately. But beyond the scholarship opportunities, we see a lot of value in athletics. The camaraderie, kids are exercising, they're outside, they're not on devices, and they're competing and really making memories. And with that, there comes conditions. They have to remain, have a passing GPA, and I just think there's a lot of value. And if we have a world-class or facility, it could potentially keep kids in our district. We know that kids go to other schools for athletics, or based on those athletic programs. So if we want to remain competitive, I won't name any of those schools, don't want to get in any trouble or anything, but we know that kids go to other schools based on athletics.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there, we're doing this for about 3 other districts right now, similar concerns, they just want to understand where they stand and what they can do.
We haven't done anything since Hellman, right? Anything big, or just a little field here and there?
I don't believe so.
What year was it?
Well, I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah, 10 years ago? Yeah, more than 10 years
More
ago.
than 10 years.
Yep.
Yep. I had one question on the 600,000. If we change and don't do part of it, are we still, this is 600 if we do everything for the design? Sorry, backing up.
Up on the fees.
Yeah. How is that structured?
How's
Like,
that?
say we say, oh, we can't do this, put that on hold.
Yeah,
Is
so.
it adjusted based on what we use, or?
Yeah,
Is it a flat rate?
that's right. So, the design portion is one section of that, right? So we got to the end of the design, you have to pay for that. But some of that money is for construction management, construction administration, right? So that's actually going through the process of building, right? So you wouldn't be on the hook to spend all that money.
Okay. Wouldn't we pay that later though, when it's actually constructed, or?
Sorry?
So that part of that 600 is gonna be utilized next year when you actually construct it?
That's right. Yeah, it's not, you don't pay 600, there's a draw schedule for it based upon different milestones over time, right?
So it's the design to bid, to pre-bid, post-bid, then construction management, it's for the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah, and then there are some reimbursables in there for things like site services, so there's other items that the district can use or can't use depending upon what the needs are of the particular construction projects.
So this covers everything except for the actual contract to whoever's doing the work? That's what we have to bid on, and that's what we have to prove later, right?
Yeah, well,
For the most part.
correct, right, we prove the bids, yeah. But if we get a bid in that's way too, high, or we decide not to do it, we back away from that.
That's-
We don't have to pay construction management for that, but we've already paid to design that project, because they did work to put it out to bid. But we own that, so maybe then the next year, we put that back out and the numbers come back favorable. So we've already done the work to design it.
Yeah,
No, I understand.
And then hopefully, we would have some sort of de-scope, right? Say the numbers came in and they were, didn't line up with what we were expecting. We would go through a de-scope process with them and understand where the cost centers are, right? Because there are things that I'm pretty sure you need to do, right? But there might be areas in there where you can find some value engineering, right? So it's not like, hey, we do this thing once, it comes out of budget, sorry, we're done. We want to get the job done for you. This will be a long-term partnership, right? So, hey, can we look at a different procurement method for this? Can we look at some aspect of design and change it such that it still meets the needs, right, based upon the feedback that we get through this de-scope processes? So it's not all cut and dried, unless things go forward.
I think I understand the concept.
Okay?
Thank
Thank you again. Thanks for all the
Thank
guidance
you.
getting here, and appreciate your time.
Thank
you. I appreciate the report. It's nice to have a glimpse of the future. We really
Yeah.
haven't had that.
We're still working on that, and you saw a bit of it, what it's gonna look like, but tonight was a big point in that, and so appreciative of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that takes us to, I guess that included the high school campus assessment then.
Yes.
So then moving on to obsolete items for review for South Middle School sound system.
Yeah, we just have a sound system at South Middle School. It's broken and beyond repair, so we'll recycle that. And then the technology department has a long list of no longer used equipment that's going to be recycled.
It says OS not supported. I'm assuming it's Windows 10. That's why it's not being.
It's an amazing amount of stuff that they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it, but it's like, wow.
Once Microsoft killed OS 10, Windows 10, it kind of threw everything out the window. All right, so that concludes the Facilities Committee meeting. Our next meeting will be scheduled for August 18th.
All right, do we need a few minute break?
Good.
You do? Okay. Hello again, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of June 10th. And we will get right into it. No public comment? No public comment. First up is the final general fund budget for fiscal year 2025. I'll turn it over to Sean.
Yeah, so this is the same general fund budget that the board passed at the May meeting. There's been no changes made to the budget. Total expenditures and revenues equal at $163,159,239, which sets the real estate tax rate at 140.1892 mils. It is a 3.6477% increase, 4.9 mils, and it does generate an additional $3,220,000 to balance the budget, and that equates to about $156.69 to the median assessed value property within the school district.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? I know we went through this last time. I guess, so nothing has changed. you
Nothing.
said.
Same numbers.
Exact numbers. No? All right. We'll keep going.
Item 2 are the other taxes which are involved within the budget: 1% earned income tax, 0.5% of real estate transfer tax, and $5 local service taxes. They are all have been in place for many years, and they do not change from year to year.
Who decides that it changes?
We are statutorily, we can't check, we cannot go any higher than where they're at.
Okay.
It's in the law.
It's in from PA state.
Yes.
law. Okay.
Yes.
So every district everywhere has the same,
Yeah.
if they have it.
The earned income tax may be different in districts. It depends what districts did. Previously, many districts had occupational assessment tax. There was a time period in the state where districts were allowed to eliminate the occupational assessment tax and increase the earned income tax.
Okay.
And many districts did that, and so many districts have a different EIT rate. It may be just
It's-
off a little bit. from
But it's nothing we
district to
can change.
Correct. At this point, there's no mechanism to increase that.
Okay.
And this district did at one point have an occupational assessment tax and did away with it
Oh, okay.
and raised the EIT. EITs used to be 0.5% for school districts. Ours is 1% for that reason.
Because we got rid of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do we get the, like, how does that money actually come to us for EIT?
So EIT money, there's a Keystone Collections is the
Yeah.
local collector for EIT. If you work for an employer, taxes are withheld from your paycheck, sent to Keystone Collections, and then they send it to the school district. At the end of the calendar year, just like you fill out a federal return, a state return, you also have to fill out a local return, and that's when it's reconciled to make sure that based on your earnings, if you paid enough of local EIT to the school district.
So they go through and this much goes to the township, this much goes to the district, like
Correct.
they split it up and,
Yes.
and distribute it, okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
And they access state tax records to make sure that the records are the same to reconcile with actually what
With the
state
state?
taxes would do. Yep, the
That
state.
people
Do they look
will
at
file
W2s and things like that?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, yeah. You have to submit your W-2s with
Yeah.
your local earned income tax return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we also get 0.5% of all real estate transfer tax, is that?
Yes, there's, within the state of Pennsylvania, there's a 2% charge on real estate transfer. 1% goes to the state, 0.5% goes to the school district, and 0.5% goes to the county. Thank you.
Okay. I did not know that. How much is that about per year?
We budget about $1.5 million, I believe,
So
and
it's
we
pretty
get
small.
somewhere in that range.
The more real estate transactions, the better.
Yes.
That's good. Other questions, comments?
Is that on new construction too, or is it just transferring?
Any sale.
Any sale,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to the homestead and farmstead.
Okay, the homestead farmstead resolution is attached to your agenda for next year. the good news is that the money from the state increased, as we pointed out at our last budget meeting. So the actual homestead farmstead reduction will go up from about $301 to $341. It's about a $40 increase for the homestead farmstead this year. So that will actually help offset the increase in real estate taxes for those people that have the homestead farmstead.
Okay, any
The next-
questions?
Okay.
That means people lost more money gambling, is that?
Correct. Yeah, state made more money gambling.
Do they get part of the sports betting, sports book stuff on the end? How does that work?
I think they're still redoing that whole,
Is it?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. if
People are
it was-
getting on a
Yeah.
website
Yeah, there's,
in the Bahamas and we're not getting.
I know they get the casino revenue, like, a lot
Yeah.
of this comes from the casinos. I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
but I think they
We're
have to be
losing a lot of money there.
within our borders for that. Like,
What's that?
I think they physically have to be within Pennsylvania for that online betting.
Oh, do
Yeah. So they're redoing some stuff with that, so.
they? Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it's distracting, you're right.
Okay, so that was number 4. Number 5 is the installment dates. We just set these each year, so people can pay their taxes on three installments: August 31st, October 31st, and December 15th. They choose to do that, they have to pay at the face value. They do not get the discount. But that has been put in place a number of years ago by the state to allow installment payments for real estate taxes. So number 6 is the 24-25 ending fund balance resolution. What we're basically doing here is prior to the end of the fiscal year, the district has to set where it would like its fund balances to be. So what we try to do is our unassigned fund balance, keep that near 8% of total general fund budget. And to do that, transfer from the PSERS reserve, like we've had the last number of years. This year, that would be about $549,000. That will put our unassigned fund balance at just over $13 million, about 7.99% of the budget that we have for next year. That would change the PSERS number in B to $2,700,000. And then letter C is the part that we put in place each year that determines that if there is any excess revenues over expenditures at the end of the year, we take those funds and we transfer them to our capital projects fund and use those for capital projects.
Questions?
So 7 is a renewal of our insurance for general property and liability and so forth. There are letters A through F there. The first is our general liability and property insurance, crime, auto liability, and boiler and machinery. Total there is $724,000. That's with a $5,000 deductible. That's up from $650,000 this year. There's an option, second option, to go to a $10,000 deductible, and the premium would drop to $711,000 from $724,000.
What do we say it's 5,000 now? How many
It's
times have
5,000 now.
we used the policy?
How many times have we used
Do
the
you
policy?
use it often, or is it, I mean, you always have to analyze that one. I mean, it's really not saving that much, but.
Yeah, it's not saving that much. My recommendation is we stay with the lower deductible.
Well, what do we use it for? I mean, that's a large deductible. When you say auto liability, that's if someone gets in an accident.
Well, any general liability, so all the claims that we've dealt with, that we settled recently for the cases involving the bus students on the buses, that falls under general liability, those sizable claims.
What about boiler and machinery?
So
Is that something?
that
Hurt
would
somebody?
be, yes, if
Okay.
we had a boiler explode, cause damage,
Okay.
so kind of stacking those policies, you damage from that type of event. So
So
yes,
crime
we
would be if
have, we
someone-
generally have a number of claims.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you're shooting through the two
we-
claims and you're pretty much giving
Yes.
it back.
2 claims and you've given it back.
Yeah,
So.
so I agree.
The next line is the commercial umbrella, which is $10 million of additional coverage above and beyond our general liability coverage.
Just for, so that would cover like the bus things?
Yeah, anything that, if we hit our limit, so
Any of the other, the
Yeah.
one above it?
generally a claim limit on general liability is $1 million.
Mhm.
If the total settlement went above that, the umbrella would kick in. So,
Up to
10 million, yeah.
for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, what that is.
The commercial umbrella is kind of like, it's kind of like equivalent to your stop loss that we talked about for the health insurance. It's there if you get a really bad claim that blows through the limits.
For, I don't know, the school leaders liability, or are you talking about the umbrella?
Yeah, the
No,
umbrella fee, yeah.
Yeah,
I was still talking about the umbrella. Okay, all right. The school leaders liability, that's 78,000.
What is that for?
So that is for, yes, yes, for him and all the rest of us. If we do something that's negligent or something, or get sued for something that we do as administrators or the board does.
Or two.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's technical coverage. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that cover us for? Is there 10 million or some high number or something?
I think that
That's
one's
fine.
also $1 million, but the umbrella covers that too. The umbrella covers all of these.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The next one I have a number for now. This is the cyber liability insurance. I got a number for that this morning. That's $50,889. It's up about $5,000. We did get a different quote from another cyber liability coverage company, and that quote came in at $55,000.
So this is if someone is a cyber student? And
No. This is if we're cyber attacked.
Ransom.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I
Yep,
understand that.
yep. This is a cyber attack.
Cyber, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I can see why that's going on.
Okay. Then the next one is our pollution coverage. So 19,000. Pollution coverage would come into play if we had an underground oil tank or something leak, get into the soil and so forth, and we need to clean up. And then the last one is our sports accident insurance. This one stays flat. It's 36,000. So this coverage is for our athletes and students, so forth. If they're hurt playing sports and so forth. So the increase here is about 9.7%. It's a total of about $85,000 over the current year. It is within what we put in the budget this year. That's a good part. We did ask for a second look from Utica, who's another company that does school districts. Companies we have now, the CM Region program, come in at 9.7%, like I said, but Utica came in at 20% above where we're at this year. So it's, again, another year.
So do we use a broker to shop this around?
Yes, Willis. Yeah, Willis Towers Watson, they're a broker, and
Did they have others they quoted too?
these are the
Just
CM
two.
Region and Utica are the two big players in school districts.
So there's not a lot
Yep.
of choices.
There's not a lot of choices. Now, there is one issue I do need to talk about, is that for some reason CM Region came out, and not just for Penn Ridge, but for all of their school districts, have decided to not cover certain buildings for flood insurance. They came forward last week with the final renewal numbers and said, we're not gonna cover 5 of your buildings for flood insurance. We pushed back very hard, Dan and I, and Dan got really upset with them. I stayed calm. But anyway, we pushed back and they to the broker, and the broker went back and they came back and they said, we're not gonna cover 2-year buildings for flood insurance. And the 2 buildings are Central and Dialer. So my question was, what in the world changed in the 48 hours since I blew my top that you're now gonna not cover, that you've changed from 5 buildings to 2 buildings? And still waiting for that answer. But
Diver's on the top of the hill.
That's what we said. We said, Diver's on
Central's
top
not-
of a ridge, if that building floods, we all need a
Yeah.
great big boat.
If that happens, I'm buying a boat.
And there's really, and really, there's
If that
nothing
happens, it'll be too
really
late for you to
around
buy a
Central
boat.
either. So
They need to give us a reason, like a why.
they're saying that they have a proprietary package of software or program that they're using to determine what buildings they're gonna cover for flood coverage or not. The problem is what they did to all their school districts is they didn't tell them this until the final renewals came out the first week of June, which makes it very difficult for any of us to react. And so our choice right now is to go with the company that has a 20% increase or the company that has a 10% increase. And then we're gonna have to look for flood coverage for Central and Divers, which our brokers are working on getting us that. They don't have it yet because, like I said, we just found out within the last 6 or 7 days that this conversation either happened. So there's a lot of hard feelings right now throughout the school district community to CM Region, and there's a lot of pushback. Dan's not the only one that blew his top with the brokers. So all of the other school districts are pushing back and basically saying to the brokers, okay, next year you got to really look at other options if this is how they're going to treat us.
Yeah, you don't know what they'd spring on you next year.
I don't know what they're going to spring on us next year. Next year they may come back and say, next year they may come back and say, we're doing all 5 buildings next year. So it's a surprise. It's a last minute surprise, which makes it very difficult for us to react. But we have to have insurance in place for July 1st. We can't let these buildings go without insurance.
Sean, what floodplain maps do they use? US?
We don't know that. They're saying that they have their own proprietary system that they are utilizing, and our broker doesn't even know because our broker has a number of school districts. We're not his only school district, and we're trying to get this information so that we can understand and talk to our clients, and they're not very forthcoming with the information. But
So CNM wouldn't write another policy just to cover that?
no,
So they're not just trying to
they don't
grab extra money or something?
Right. So our broker's looking for flood insurance for those 2 buildings floors. So depending on when that information comes back, that may be something that I need to have the permission to put in place before July 1st so that we're covered. Not that there's going to be a flood on top of that ridge anytime soon, but
You never know the way.
you never know. It's just really odd, and it just.
Well, whoever we discuss this with, let them know that this was gonna be up next year, and anybody who gets their foot in the door is gonna have a good shot at it.
Believe me, that was my message to our broker to send back to CM Region, that somebody else is gonna have a real good chance of getting our business next year.
And CM Region is local to this area, or are they national?
So I think the CM Region insurance program for Pennsylvania is part of the national CM Region company. They're a big company.
So this is
But
only.
this used to all be PSBA insurance program, and then the PSBA insurance program became converted into CM Region. CM Region picked it up. So this program has been in place for multiple years for school districts. First through PSBA, and then through CM Region. As long as I've been in this business, it's always been the PSBA insurance program is what school districts use for insurance. And they've always, and it's built for school districts. And why they're doing this?
I'm just curious if they were like Pennsylvania, it was that, Exeter flood, their school, high school flooding was like the driver.
And we asked, well, does this flood mean, we get a pipe break and it floods the building, or we get something like that? And they said, no, this is a natural flood. If you get a natural flood, flood your building, that's what we're talking about. So, it's baffling.
But they're not even telling you what maps they're using to determine that?
No.
I think we should at least ask them to give an explanation.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
And ask for the criteria they're using to
Yeah.
make that determination.
Absolutely, our broker has asked and asked, he's pushing very hard to, because he's dealing with this with many more than just, Penridge. He has a number of school districts, and he's trying to get the information for all of us. So he's asking those questions, and I'm pretty sure that we weren't the only ones that yelled at this week. So.
It's not like we haven't come out of a drought.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. We'll put what we have on the agenda. If we get more information about the flood insurance between
Yeah,
now and the
keep us
board
all-
meeting, we'll get that to you and put it on there. If something doesn't come until after our board meeting, we still need to get the buildings
You
covered.
still need to have flood insurance by,
I would not want these buildings to
in
go.
case there's a flood.
I know, Ron, but I get it, but I
No, I understand. I mean, everything else, I get that as a school,
With
you
the-
have to do that.
Yeah, with the replacement costs of these buildings, to not have them protected, I wouldn't sleep at night.
I agree.
Um,
But hopefully, we can find a way out of this next year.
Yeah.
That's incredible. They would drop that bomb.
Makes no sense.
It's bad business practice. for
And
sure.
we really go through like 3 rounds of renewal with them. We start in March and we get our budget numbers and our broker gets that information from CM Region.
No clue
No,
about.
and then we get another one in May to make sure that our numbers are still right on our budget, by April, May. And then they come to us with the final renewals, usually the first week of June. And we had a meeting on Friday at the IU and with all the business managers, and that was the one thing one of the business managers brought up. Did anybody lose their flood coverage? And we're all like, yep. We did. We just found out like 2 days ago. So it was a. Yeah.
All right.
All right, so the next, number 8, we have a number of contracts for you this month. The first 2 are Valley Forge Educational Services, an extended school year program for the first student, and then educational services for next school year for the second student.
These for special education.
Yep, these are from the special educational part.
Figured most of those were-
C and D are Learn Well. These are the educational services provided to students that are generally in a medical facility, and we are responsible for the cost of educating the kids when they're in those systems. E, Keystone Freedom Academy, again, educational services. This is for a student for 25-26 school year. The cost of $325 per day. F is 2 settlement agreements for students identified as 25 and 26, and I believe that Mr. Johnson has provided you information about those. G is our annual contract with Dr. Warner. He reviews our IEPs for health-related services. Cost is $175 per hour for each, $175 per hour per completed review. Which is the same cost as this year. Then we have Dr. Davis. He's our physician for student and bus driver physicals. Bus driver physicals are $85 this year, and student physicals are $75. Next is our dentist, Dr. Lewis. He does student dental exams, or his office does the student dental exams, $35 per hour. Dr. Lewis has been with us for a long time also. J, Grandview Hospital, this is the contract so that we have medical coverage at our home football games. We have to have that as a requirement. So we get a doctor from the hospital. Moving on to K, Levy Bus Company, they do our third-party CDL testing. So when our drivers are ready, we can get them to Levy, CDL test. They don't have to go to the DMV for that. Moving on, L, Bucks County IU. This is the annual Technology Pool Consortium agreement. It's $880 is our share next year. And that's for anything legally happening in the technology world. The lawyer that does this provides that information to everybody in the pool. We all get the same information. So if there's a legal issue, all that information goes out to everyone that's in the pool. So, that's been very helpful over the years to Mrs. Miller. Johnson Controls is M, that's the next one. This is our fire protection and CCTV access control service. 3-year agreement costing $90,000 a year. The next contract is Scenario Learning Vector Solutions. This is for our employee training program that mandated trainings that all employees must take. This is the system online system we use to give those trainings to employees and then track the results and that people have actually completed.
Is that just a yearly cost independent of how many people take it, or is it?
Yearly cost.
You take as many people as you, because you.
The next one, O, is our vision benefits plan renewal. It's 48 cents per employee per month administrative fee, and there's no change. Everything's exactly the same, so it's just a renewal. The next one is the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania. Again, this is the student assistance team that we have in place, the SAP team. These folks provide the service and the training for the SAP team. And that cost is $41,709. We are required to have a SAP team in place, correct, Dr.?
Yes.
We're required to have that.
For the state?
It's law
Yes.
that we have to have a SAP team. And so we get the training and the resources from
What is that?
Student assistance program, so it provides interventions and prevention programs for drugs and alcohol.
And this 41 is for training, and do they supply anything else? Or?
Yeah, they provide the supplies and whatever is needed for that program.
But all the labor comes from.
We do have.
You have your team.
We have teams here, and then
SAP trained.
Yeah, that are SAP trained. That where these folks come in. And then the last contract is Minuteman Security, Life Safety. So this is West Rock Hill. We need to upgrade the intrusion system there. That monitoring or that alarm system is.
So the burglar alarm panel is what we're looking to upgrade it because we recently had issues with it. We had it corrected, but the ultimate cure would be to upgrade it since it's a very dated panel over there.
So this is different than anything else we use, or do we use them anywhere else?
We do use them in other places. The issue over there is that, and this is something that over time we've been trying to, upgrade, is the phone line for the fire alarm and the burglar panel is combined, and we are trying to separate it by doing cellular dialers. And this is something that Kelly was working on, and we wanted to continue it on with West Brock, because I believe West Brock is the last location that we have that taking place. So by doing this upgrade, we'll have corrected that issue district-wide.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Craig. Number 9, finance bids results for our art supplies for next year. We have a number of different companies listed there that received bids or awarded bids, and there is a detailed spreadsheet attached to your that is very long, 9 pages long, with a lot of highlighting of the winning bids, and there are a lot of items on there. So if you wish to look at that, but this is for all of our art supplies for next year.
I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill your request.
Somehow you just tripped my blue bag.
I think that was a question from Chris.
What is happening?
That request is shot down.
Chris is
No art supplies for Chris.
You don't want to see my artist bag.
All right, so moving on to number 10, this is a list of student activity accounts for renewals and carryover for next year. These will come in throughout the summer. We'll bring another group to you in August, but each year, each club makes a decision whether they're going to continue the next year or shut down, and then they have to submit documentation to Dan for the renewal. and if they're carrying money over, and document that, and then we provide that to you so that you see that list of what's happening with all the clubs. Most of these are high school, there's one for North Middle School, but we also have club activities in the other middle schools. So you'll see more for middle schools, you'll also see more for the high school, but this is what we have so far, so we're putting it out there for you just to get those approvals done.
Do we know if a club isn't renewed? Or do you guys know that? Like when they stop it?
You get documentation about stopping them,
Yeah,
right?
if they
Yeah, it counts.
don't wanna continue the club, they'll fill out a form basically saying they're ceasing operation and it's not gonna renew for the next year.
Okay. You got any this year?
Not yet, I know we had one last year, so.
Okay, yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, moving on to number 11 is our annual list of bank depositories for next fiscal year. This is just a list of banks that we may utilize or do utilize for certain things. Of course, QMB is our local depository, so a great deal goes through QMB. Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund is where we do the great deal of our investing. And we also use the local government investment trust. Now,
So QMB, how does the insurance work for that? Or money in there?
so
For the bank insurance, not our
yeah,
insurance.
so the bank would have insurance on our deposits.
Two?
Dan, what's the level of insurance on the deposit? The bank?
The traditional, if you're thinking the 250.
Right, that's the traditional.
Is one side of it, but they do secure the balance of our funds.
With collateral.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's actually times whenever they'll ask us to move money, and we will do that.
Okay.
Especially the time of the year when we're getting a lot of tax revenue in. And we try to get it moved to PISLAF or to Pliget to get it invested. But sometimes they'll get too much in and they'll call and we'll get it moved. They don't like us to have,
Yeah,
some-
well, they're on top of that, that's good.
so they're very good about that, so.
Is any of the money, everything that you move it to is
Yes.
guaranteed?
Mhm.
Assume you have to do that.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Where do we?
12.
All right, thank you. So another list here, this is our cooperative purchasing arrangements for organizations that are out there that we get approved each year so that we have them available to use. And then you heard Mr. Young talk about cooperative purchasing tonight as an avenue for some of these things. For example, he said CoStars. There are some jobs that you could get done through CoStars. Roofing is something that you can do through cooperative purchasing. So there are some areas. Of course, the IU, we use cooperative purchasing with the IU a lot. We do fuel, diesel, and gasoline. We do joint bids with them. So we use PEPM a lot for our technology purchases. So these are all state-run cooperative purchasing or local-run cooperative purchasing that we can piggyback on. It saves districts time and money from going through the legal bidding process and advertising on that because somebody's doing that for you, and we're getting the benefit of large group purchasing. All of our projects this summer are CoStar's projects. Yep. They were bid through the state program. So, thank you, Craig. So we do use these resources.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's the same as it was
Yep.
previous years?
Yep, same as it was previous years.
No change.
Yep, no change. But just trying to share how we utilize these and as much as we can. Number 13 is breakfast and lunch prices for next year. They're the same, going to be the same.
Great.
14 is the annual request for us in the business office, for Dan and I and our staff to be able to continue to pay bills throughout the summer, because once we meet here in June, we won't see you guys again until the end of August. There's certain things that we need to continue to pay, but what we do each time we make a pay or make a run of checks is we'll send you that list before we release the checks. It gives you an opportunity to ask questions or let us know if you have anything you have any concerns about. And of course, we'll get back to you with any information that you know. But this helps us be able to keep the district running fiscally, get our bills paid, make sure we're not getting late fees and so forth for not paying bills over the summer. So it's a big help. It's a very big help for us to be able to do this. So, and it's something we put this on each June and ask for approval to do that. So that's all I got.
Any comments or questions?
Well, so Kristen sent out some articles around recent developments and losing federal funding. Is there anything on there that you feel like we need to get on our radar or start planning for?
We haven't seen anything specific as far as
exactly
what we may get reduced. We have a pretty strong feeling that we're probably going to get reduced.
Yeah.
And a lot of those federal programs are dollar for dollar. You don't spend it till you have it. So there may be some things that we need to do without and cut back. If we don't have funding for title TAs or teachers or so forth, we may need to reduce those.
Yeah.
So we have to see what actually happens and what. I know that they talked about Title II going away. Title II is a lot of staff development, training, that type of money. So that's something that we would either have to do without, or we need to then in the future add additional dollars to the general fund to replace those things. But again, nothing specific and concrete yet. There's still just a lot of noise. Yeah.
And I think we should also talk about House Bill 1500, which passed in the PA House. Now will go before the Senate. Of course, that's the cyber charter school reform, which would cap.
Did it pass it?
It passed in the House, a very close margin, but now it's before this.
Call your senator.
Sorry, I'm trying to look for the numbers on it, and I was actually going to say the same thing about House Bill 1500, and
it sets an $8,000 cap.
it sets an $8,000 cap, but there were some numbers associated with it that were staggering, and just give me a second to pull this up. There was an audit performed at the beginning of this year, and in that audit, it found that, I think it goes to one of those things that just the public needs to be aware of, that during the audit, it was, that the cyber charter schools in Pennsylvania, their fund balances during the audit increased from $365 million, increased $365 million from $254 million to $619 million, which equates to a 144% increase in their fund balances. So when we're talking about trying to do boilers and roofs and all these things, we have $619 million sitting in cyber charter schools. They're buying buildings and gas cards, and this is our community's taxpayer money that's sitting there, and they're doing that. They're buying shell buildings and not having kids actually going into them. And I think House Bill 1500 is going to be a big help, but CCA during the audit period spent $196 million to purchase or renovate 21 buildings. I mean, it's a cyber charter school. They do online learning, and they have 21 buildings, and they've spent $196 million in these buildings. I mean, that's a huge chunk. If you divide that among the 500 districts, and
there are also, to your point, there are also significant expenditures on advertising.
Yep.
Well,
and that's, I've been on the board, I've put, said it both budget cycles. They have half boards at the Phantoms games. They have a Zamboni at the Phantoms games. They actually just read another article where they have lobbied for I think 10 of the largest amateur sporting events. for advertising. You know, they're bringing kids in, and one of the things that I had heard, and I think this, you know, goes to the point of House Bill 1500, not to get completely off track here, but the Lehigh County District Attorney is filing charges because there was two 15-year-old students in Lehigh County who were cyber charter students, and their parents were neglecting and not feeding them. 15-year-old twins, they weighed 85 and 90 pounds. And the entire time that they were in cyber school, they never had an adult lay eyes on them. So these kids were malnourished, and their parents were abusive, and they never had anybody see them. And I think that one of the big takeaways from House Bill 1500 is that if they're in instructional time, they have to have cameras on the students that whole time, so that they can monitor these kids. Because if they were in a brick and mortar school or parochial school or any school, there would have been eyes on these kids. So, you know, just to advocate for everybody to get out there and call your state legislators and push. I mean, it goes beyond just the dollars and cents of this. I mean, there's human cost to this, and these kids should have been picked up a long time ago. So.
Yeah, one part of 1500 actually creates a commission to study cyber charter schools and make recommendations back to the legislature, I think by April.
Yes.
The worry is that the cap will get stripped out, and as it goes through the Senate and then the reconciliation process, the cap will get stripped, tuition cap will get stripped out, and we'll end up with another study. And the frustrating part is that the last three auditor generals have all said the same thing in audit reports, statewide audit reports of cyber charter schools.
I think it's
We
been
can't
since
fix this problem.
Auditor generals since 2010 have been calling for. I think it's since 2010 have been calling for a revision to the cyber charter school financing.
That cap would
So-
put $1 million back in.
Yeah, if that cap would allow us to buy the buses that we took
Yeah.
out of the budget.
Yeah.
Call Mr. Coleman, everybody, our senator, because it's now up to him.
Right.
So, and the other one I can't find the dollars to it, but it was the amount of money that I can't remember what it was, $500 million on the federal level that's been stripped away from the DOE. And I figured it out. I think it came out to being $800,000 on average per Pennsylvania school, just flat rate across every 500. So another $800,000. That's our 4 buses that we just lost.
And if you recall, we had a board information session about Job Corps a few months ago. And we haven't heard anything from our representative of Job Corps, and it was part of a cut. And that was going to be a dropout prevention program for students. And apparently there's been an injunction by court, so we'll see where that goes. But we have attempted to contact the person, Ms. Payne, and we haven't received a response, and now we don't know. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did find it. It was there was $12.9 million in DOE budget cuts, and Pennsylvania's got 3.14% of all total K through 12 classes, or K through 12 students in the nation. So, you know, I did the quick math on the 3.14% of the 12.9 million, and that's 405. 12.9 billion. It's $405 million. So a flat share across 500 would be 810,000. We lost by budget cuts at DOE. So, you know, I assume things are coming, but you know, keep staying on your local legislators and the congressional leaders and keep pushing, because there's going to be some real cuts coming up.
We should start having an alternate budget forecast figures, where it is and what the worst case is, so we can plan for the future, because it's not something we want to just react to 6 months from now. We gotta look at it. Scary. Anything else? Well, we can end on a happier note, but thank you. If that is it, we have no public comment. And meeting is adjourned.
I think there might have been a
There might have been
Oh, there
public
is?
comment.
Excuse me, hold that thought. I apologize.
Public, do you have comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the 6 board members that showed up today. I wanted to thank Sean Delbert and ICS for the great presentations. That's it.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't, just got used to nobody saying.
We had a people.
Back that up again, and now the meeting is